Big business.
RSK, let it play, boy.
Yeah.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. I wake up inside me a prayer, brush my teeth, babe, then I throw on some threads. Wash my face, grab a cup, pour me some yum, put on my backpack, then I'm off to the bread. I eat these devils for breakfast, gotta be careful. Whole lot of blood being shed in the streets. World is so wicked, I weep for the living, I drop a free cheer for the dead. All my white friends in my pocket, or either they loading onto this black card that I swipe. Say every time that I drop it, the verses be hitting more harder than problems of life. Rich, I collected 2 pennies from every person that willingly gave me advice. Being afraid can't exist in my spirit, I'm fearing no man but the Father in Christ. I put in work with the brothers, we stood on them corners from 10 to like 9 or some night, teaching our people the gospel, equipped with a camera, some posters, some speakers and mic. Every time that I see mama, she telling me, son, you gotta walk in the light. Christ, the bread of heaven, keep feeding my spirit, and I want a low, not a slide. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
When I tell you I'm an Israelite, tribe of Judah, don't you take it personal. Plead the blood on these demons, we purging them. Don't entertain Jezebels, we be curving them. Ayy, I got a ribbon, she virtuous. In person, this blue life ain't virtual. I can't forget when I heard the truth. I got cut with that word, it got surgical. Conviction can lead to repentance. I pray these verses encourage you. We repenting, now we on the vertical. Judah rising, see Isaiah 32. Big business, nothing minuscule. I picked up that pen back in middle school. Guard your light and take heed who you listen to. Watch your mouth and your ears and your vision too. Hashatan and Shalkani won't finish you. In Mortal Kombat, this war is not physical. Gird your loins up and follow the general. Messiah is coming, that's scriptural. You gotta starve your flesh. The real war ain't even started yet. This look like a setup for a second exodus. I'm trying to be where the water at. Let's get it.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
Yo, shalom to everybody, man. Shalom. 7 gangs, source gang over everything. You know we rocking, man. We got the savant from the Levant. He's back again to give you guys that great content, man. The brother has been doing a hell of a job elucidating information, disseminating information, providing you guys with a great argument from Haplogroup J and a great argument for the origin of the Semitic people. Tonight he's back again on Haplogroup J equaling Japheth. This is part 1. So with no further ado, my brother Avery, talk to the people, man.
All right, shalom everyone, shalom. Glad to be back. And as Yeshub said, this is part 1. Haplogroup J equals Japheth. And so let's begin. We're going to go deeper, way much deeper than we did last time on Haplogroup J. And so let's actually get this started. All right, so Haplogroup J equals Japheth. the Caucasian origins of Haplogroup J. This is what we're going to be focusing on tonight, the Caucasian origins of Haplogroup J. So as we covered in the past, the most ancient samples of Haplogroup J was found among the Caucasus hunter-gatherers in Georgia of the Caucasus. We're just going to do a slight brief recap. Both Georgian hunter-gatherer samples were assigned to Haplogroup J at the with Catos belonging to the sub-haplogroup J2A. In a study exploring J haplogroups in 445 individuals from Eurasia, J2A was found at highest frequency in Georgia and Iraq. And those are the two locations we'll be focusing on the most tonight. It is intriguing that both the mitochondrial and the Y chromosome haplogroups of our ancient Georgian samples have been associated with the Neolithicization of Europe. This tentatively suggests a genetic link between Georgian hunter-gatherers and early European migrants from the Near East. And so, just recapping, these are where we found the samples in the heart of Georgia, right in the center of the country. And this is where we find the oldest samples of Haplogroup J in the Upper Paleolithic. So the most ancient samples of Haplogroup J are generally found around the areas of Anatolia, Armenia, and Iran. Again, just quickly recapping, around the time of the Neolithic demographic transition, the genome-wide ancestry of West Asian populations was geographically structured into three groups. Among them, haplogroup J-M304 is found in the Caucasus/Iranian and Anatolian hunter-gatherers and farmers, but not in the Levant ones. Unfortunately, so far, DNA studies are missing from the Arabian Peninsula and Mesopotamia, where haplogroup J-M304 is frequent nowadays. The J1B-F4306 and the J1A2-PH77 branches split off at the very beginning. These are rare lineages distributed mostly among ancient and modern populations from the Caucasus, the Armenian highland, Iran, and Pakistan. Interestingly, the 13,000-year-old hunter-gatherer from the South Caucasus belongs to J1B-F4306. The J1A1B-Z18375 branch has a geographic distribution substantially overlapping with that of the J1B-F4306 and J1A2-PH77 branches. The J1A1B-Z18375 branch is found overwhelmingly among ancient and modern populations from the Caucasus, the Armenian highlands, Iran, and Anatolia. These branches constitutes the aforementioned peak of haplogroup J1-M267 frequency in the Northeast Caucasus. Haplogroup J1-M267 were found among populations living in the Caucasus and neighboring regions. Most of the deeply derived lineages belonging to the population of the northern latitudes of the region in line with the findings of the late Paleocene hunter-gatherers from the Southern Caucasus. Our analysis provide better statistical confidence for the origin of haplogroup J1-M267 in the area compassing the Caucasus, the Armenian highlands, and the Zagros Mountains. So keep all these locations in mind, of course. And so here's again the typical geographical region where J was in ancient times. And of course, J1 being in the Anatolian European region and the Caucasus, as well as Iran. So haplogroup J in ancient times is associated with the northern latitude, I guess you can say, of the Near East. And therefore, when it comes to modern populations in the world, who has the highest amount of haplogroup J? Here's a study that actually goes into this called Parallel Evolution of Genes and Languages in the Caucasus region. And it says, again, haplogroup J2A4B-M67 comprised 51 through 79% of the Y chromosomes in the English and 3 Chechen populations, Northeast Caucasus, Nakat linguistic group. So the English and the Chechens have 51 to 79% of haplogroup J2. And now skipping on down, it says, finally, haplogroup J1 star-M267 comprised at 44 through 99% of the Avars, the Dargians, the Kataks, the Kubchi, and the Luzgians. Southeast Caucasus, Dagestan linguistic group. So around the Caucasus, a lot of these Caucasian groups have up to nearly 100% of haplogroup J. This particular group, as I mentioned right here down below, the Dagestan, just to sum up all these groups, have about 99%, and the Nakat linguistic group of the Northeast Caucasus have up to 79%. So that's quite a bit. And so here's the region of the Caucasus that you find these high percentages, some of the highest percentages of haplogroup J. Let me zoom in. So here's the Nakat in red right here. They have J1. And here is the Dagestan. And forgive me when it comes to these pronunciations. I'm, English speaker, so I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but I'm just saying it the way I pronounce it. So this is the Nakat is J1 and J2 is the Dagestan. So they're basically in this region of the Caucasus close to the Caspian Sea. And here's a bit of a closer image. You see J1, J2. These peoples right here have some of the highest amounts of haplogroup J, up to 99%, which is basically 100%. Perhaps it's unsurprising that haplogroup J would be seen at its highest amount among peoples of the Caucasus. After all, it did originate in that part of the world and has been among the most ancient populations since prehistoric and protohistoric times. But with that being said, it's important that we study these people because they could give us insights on the background of the ancient haplogroup J males in the early historic era. Therefore, the highest amount of haplogroup J was among the Nakat Dagestan linguistic group of the Northeast Caucasus. So what exactly is this language family? So let's look into the Nakat or the Nak Dagestan language. So the Northeast Caucasian languages, also called Eastern Caucasian, or the Nakat Dagestanian languages, is a family of languages spoken in the Russian Republic of Dagestan, Chechnya, and Ingushetia, and in the North Azerbaijan, as well as in the diaspora populations in Western Europe and the Middle East. And so here's basically sort of like a map of it kind of perfectly overlaps with the genetic map we just saw. But here's the map of where these languages are spoken. And again, you can call these languages Eastern Caucasian, East Caucasian, Nakat Dagestan, North Caspian, or just Caspian. And here are the subdivisions. We actually just named these groups in the genetic study, so it's fairly interesting. Here's a closer look at these Caucasian languages. Several names have been in use for this family. The most common term, Northeast Caucasian, consists of the, contrast the three established families of the Caucasian languages: Northeast Caucasian, Northwest Caucasian, which is Abkhaz, Badakhshan, and the South Caucasian, Kurtvelian. And so here's basically a tree. I love seeing the language trees. So the Nak Dagestan language, of course, one branches off with just simply the Nak, and then the Dagestanian, which branches into about 5 different linguistic groups who are obviously connected to the ethnic groups under the same name. And here's just another sample of this tree. Again, the Eastern Caucasian branch of languages. The people who who created these trees are mentioned down below, like Nicole's 2003 example and Sechul's 2009 example. And here is Shakul's again 2009 example. I think this is the best one of the best ones that I like. So some linguists, notably Igor D. Dinkov and Starsten, see evidence of a genealogical connection between the Northeast Caucasian family and the extinct languages Hurrian and Urartuan. And those are 2 specific people groups that you should start studying, by the way. So anyways, further it says, Hurrian was spoken in various parts of the Fertile Crescent in the 3rd and 2nd millennium BC. Urartuan was the language of Urartu, a powerful state that existed between 1000 BC or earlier and 585 BC. And the area centered on Lake Van in current Turkey. The 2 languages are classified together as the Hurro-Urartuan family. Dankov proposed the name Alarondian for the union of the Hurro-Urartuan and Northeast Caucasian. The Proto-Northeast Caucasian language had many terms for agriculture, and Joanna Nichols has suggested that its speakers may have been involved in the development of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent and only later moved north to the Caucasus. So the Nakat Dagestan language, also known as Northeast Caucasian languages, has subgroups such as the Aldrian languages. So let's study the Aldelian languages. So the Aldelian languages are a proposed language family that encompasses the Northeast Caucasian Nak Dagestan languages and the extinct Hurro-Urartuan language. The geographic distribution is Caucasus and Anatolia. So the term Aldrian is derived from the Greek Aldrinio, the name of the ethnic group mentioned by Herodotus, which is usually equated with the people of the kingdom of Urartu in modern-day Armenia, northwest Iran, and eastern Turkey. The term Aldrian languages was revived by I.M. Dankov in the proposed language family that unites the Hurro-Urartuan and Northeast Caucasian languages. Work by I.M. Dankov and Starstrand in 1986 asserted the connection between Nakat Dagestan, Northeast Caucasian, and Hurro-Urartian on the basis of composition of the reconstruction of the Proto-Nakat Dagestan, later published in 1994 with Ninkov Levy. Another subgroup of the Nakat Dagestan Northeast Caucasian languages is the Hurro-Urartian language. So the Hurro-Urartian languages are an extinct language family of the ancient Near East, comprising only 2 known languages, Hurrian and Urartian. The geographic distribution is Armenia, Anatolia, Syria, Mesopotamia, and the Zagros Mountains. It is often assumed that the Hurro-Urartian languages, or a pre-split Proto-Hurro-Urartian languages, were originally spoken in the Kora-Araxes culture. So ultimately, these Nakat Dagestan Northeast Caucasian languages and their subgroups derive from the North Caucasian languages. So all these language groups that I just said, these subgroups come from the bigger branches, the North Caucasian language. So just briefly going over this. The North Caucasian language is sometimes called simply Caucatic, is a proposed language family consisting of a pair of well-established language families spoken in the Caucasus, predominantly in the north, consisting of the Northwest Caucasian family and the Northeast Caucasian family, also known as Nakash-Dagestan, which we just went over. And so here is basically the East Caucasian and West Caucasian languages that are spoken in the Caucasus. And here's the North Caucasian language tree made by Nicole Levy and Starstren in 1994. And I actually do like this. You actually can see right here from the North Caucasian language comes the Nakat Dagestan, and then you have the Nakat languages and the people who speak it, which would be like the Bats, the Chechens, and the English. And very close to it will be people like the Hurrians and the Uratrians. And over here, you got the Dagestanian languages. And I'm not going to read all of them, but you can kind of see the various people groups that speak this. So it's a big language tree. Here's another table or another chart that shows it. But this deals with dates. But anyways, ultimately, these Nakat Dagestan Northeast Caucasian languages and their subgroups such as Hurrian and ancestor North Caucasian languages derive from the ultimate Caucasian language family. So now let's actually learn about the Caucasian language itself. So the Caucasian languages comprise a large and extremely variant array of languages spoken by more than 10 million people in and around the Caucasus Mountains, which lie between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. And as you can see, this would make up a lot of peoples. And so what people actually don't know, and I guess I'll just say right here, there is a difference between Caucasian languages and people and Indo-Europeans in a sense. We often call people Caucasians here in the Western world, but really true Caucasians will be your Georgians, your Chechens, your English, people like that. Like Caucasian is its own linguistic family, its own ethnic group, and all the other realms. So the families indigenous to the Caucasus, 3 of these families have no current indigenous members outside of the Caucasus and are considered indigenous to the area. Like I was just saying, these people are indigenous Caucasians. These are your true Caucasians, not Anglo-Saxons, not Germans. These are true Anglo-Saxons. These are true Caucasians right here in the Caucasus. So anyways, our focus is on the Northeast Caucasian. So the Northeast Caucasian, also called the Nakat Dagestan or the Caspian family, has about 3.8 million speakers to this day. And so linguists such as Sergiu Starstren see the Northeast Dagestan and Northwest Azbekha Dengedi families as related and proposed uniting them in a single North Caucasian family, sometimes called Kaskik or simply Caucasian. So let's get a little bit more understanding of Caucasian languages, group of languages indigenous to Transcaucasia and adjacent areas of the Caucasus region between the Black and Caspian Sea. As used in this article, the term excludes the Indo-European. Keep in mind, it excludes the Indo-European and the Turkic and some other languages of the area, all of which were introduced to the Caucasus in historic times. The Caucasian languages are found in the territory north and south of the Greater Caucasus region. The Caucasian languages fall into 3 typically well-defined language families: the Northwest Caucasian, or the Abkhazio-Abkhazinian languages, and the Northeast Caucasian, or the Nakat Dagestan languages, In the South Caucasian, the Katvanian languages, also called Iberian. The Northeast Caucasian languages are divided into two groups: the Abzahel Abginian and the Northwest Caucasian languages, and the Nak Dangestanian or the Northeast Caucasian languages. The Nakat Dangestanian language, the Nakat Dangestan group consists of the Nakat and the Dangestan languages. Some investigators subdivide the Nakat Dangestan languages into two independent groups: Central Caucasian, which will be the Nak, and the East Caucasian language, which will be the Dagestan. The Chechens and Ingush live in Chechnya and Ingishdinia. Both the Chechen and the Ingush, which were fairly similar to one another, are written. So let's learn just a little bit more about the Caucasian language families. The Ibero-Caucasian language family is one of the several language families spoken in the Caucasus Mountains, a narrow land bridge between the Black and Caspian Sea, home to one of the highest concentrations of languages in the world. All are believed to have been in the area for many thousands of years. The puzzle of the isolated Caucasian languages has been attracting the attention of scholars since the 19th century. They have tried in vain to relate Caucasian languages to languages spoken outside of the Caucasus area. They did succeed, however, in establishing links between the North Caucasian languages and the extinct languages that were spoken in Anatolia and present-day Turkey, in Mesopotamia and present-day Iraq. The Northeast Caucasian languages belong to two families, and the Northwest Caucasian and what we're focusing on, the Northeast Caucasian family, also called Nakat Dangestan or East Caucasian. So what's fascinating about the Caucasian language is that it's neither Semitic nor Indo-European, but it's its own isolated linguistic family. And in ancient times, you could find non-Semitic and non-Indo-European languages spoken in Anatolia, Armenia, Iran, and Mesopotamia, and even the Levant. With that being said, Caucasian speakers were close to Indo-European speakers. There is evidence of borrowing loan words in languages such as the Nakat Dangestan language. And so this is a good book that goes into that. It says, of the three Caucasian language families, only the Nakat Dangestan language has a family tree of comparable complexity to that of the Indo-European. The three Nakat languages include, Chechen, English, and the outers, the Batsbi, probably go back to a deep division in the family, and many experts believe that Proto-Nak split off somewhat earlier than the ancestor of the Dagestanian branches. The ultimate linguistic relationship of the Nakat Dagestanian or Northeast Caucasian or East Caucasian have yet to be established with certainty, but there is general consensus about its internal structure. The Dagestanian languages form a family, and the Nak languages are a family, and the Dagestanian and the Nak are sisters, and comprise the two branches of Northeast Caucasian. So Dingoff and Starstrand in 1986 assumed that Huratian is related to the Nakat Dagestanian and assembly a punitive cognate set so as maximize similarities between the two families. All right, so now let's turn our focus on the Nak language. Let's specifically break these two languages down. So the Nak languages are a group of languages within the Northeast Caucasian family, spoken chiefly by the Chechens and the English in the North Caucasus. Again, here's where the Nak languages are spoken and the people. The Chechen, English, and Bats peoples are also groups under the ethno-linguistic umbrella of Nak peoples. The Nak languages were historically classified in the independent North Central Caucasian family, but are now recognized as a branch of Northeast Caucasian family. The separation of Nak from common Northeast Caucasian has been tentatively dated to the Neolithic, which is the 4th millennium BC. So the Nak language is spoken by the Chechen and the English. These people inhabit the northeast of the Caucasus, and they are the very people with the highest amount of haplogroup J. Again, haplogroup J2A4B-M67 comprise 51 through 79% of the Y chromosomes in the English and 3 Chechen populations, Northeast Caucasus, the Nakat linguistic group. Finally, J1-M267 comprise 44 through 99% of the Avars, the Durjans, the Kataks, the Gubachi, and the Azbinjans, Southeast Caucasian Dagestan linguistic group. So basically, both the Nakat and the Dagestan linguistic groups have up to 100% of haplogroup J. Just recapping that. And of course, it's over the same geographical region of these Caucasian languages, obviously. So the Caucasus is the origin of haplogroup J. The oldest population with J are the Caucasus hunter-gatherers. The people with the highest form of J are the Chechens and the English. They speak a Caucasian language from the Nakat Dagestan family. The Caucasian language itself is neither Semitic nor Indo-European, but isolate. This is all important information because it could give us an idea about early haplogroup J males. With that being said, let's study the Chechens and the English. What more can we learn about their genotype, phenotype, history, etc.? And let's begin with the English. So the English, a Northeast Caucasian language. The English are a Northeast Caucasian native ethnic group of the North Caucasus, mostly inhabiting near native Ingushtania. So Ingushtania is a republic of Russia located in the North Caucasus of Eastern Europe. The republic is part of the North Caucasian Federal District and shares land borders with the country of Georgia to the south. So here is Ingushtania, right here is just a map of the country. So according to Lante Manvrovi, the 11th century Georgian chronicler, the word Caucasian is derived from the Venyak ancestor Kavakas. According to Professor George Archanbazges of Ilid State University, the Vanaks are the ancient natives of the Caucasus. It is noteworthy that according to genealogical table drawn up by Lentovi Mendrovi, the legendary founder of the Vanaks was Kavas, hence the name Kavasnians, one of the ethnicons met in the ancient Georgian written sources, signifying the ancestor of the Chechens and the English. As appears from the above, the Vanaks, at least by name, are presented as the most Caucasian people of all the Caucasians, the Caucasus, the Vahaks, and the Vahakians in the Georgian historical tradition. In the article in Science magazine, Berenice Willwithrich states that American linguist Dr. Joanna Nichols has used language to connect modern people of the Caucasus region to the ancient farmers of the Fertile Crescent. And her work suggests that farmers of the region were Proto-Nakat Dagestanians. Nichols, in quote, as stating that the Nak Dagestani languages are the closest thing we have to the direct continuation of the cultural and linguistic community that gave rise to Western civilization. So 10,000 through 8,000 BC. According to Berenice Winstrich article, Peering into the Past with Words, Joanna Nichols shows that linguistic evidence indicates the ancestors of Nak people migrating to the slopes of the Caucasus from the Fertile Crescent, where farming and raising sheep and cattle had been discovered. Nichols stated the Nak Dagestan languages are the closest thing we have to a direct continuation of the cultural and linguistic family that gave rise to Western civilization. Anthropologist Henry Harpending of the University of Utah is impressed by her research. So here's sort of like a map of how these people would have got to the Caucasus coming out of the Fertile Crescent. And so 6,000 through 4,000 BC, Neolithic era, pottery is known to the region. Old settlements near Al-Arut and Magi's, discovered in the modern times, reveals tools made out of stone axes, polished stones, stone knives, stones with holes drilled in them, clay dishes, etc. Settlements made out of clay bricks discovered in the plains. In the mountains, there were discovered settlements made out of stone surrounded by walls. Some of them dated back to 8,000 BC. Now, through 4,000 through 3,000 BC, the Caraxes culture dominate the Ingishania. Invention of the wheel, 3000 BC, horseback riding, metalworks, copper, gold, silver, iron, dishes, armor, daggers, knives, and arrow tips. So here is the Caraxes culture, the region, basically compassing the areas of Eastern Anatolia, a bit of Iran and the South Caucasus. The genetics of Ingistania's population. So the English have 89% of haplogroup J2, or should I say J2 Y DNA, which is the highest known frequency in the world. And J2 is closely associated with the Fertile Crescent. So this is very interesting. So Ingistania has, and the English people have 89% of J2, and it's the highest in the world. This is a very key thing to keep in mind and to remember. So in 1901, Scottish Geographical Magazine on page 570 through 572 mentions the English are considered very ancient inhabitants of the Caucasus, but their origin is lost in obscure and even contradictory traditions. The complexion of the English is swarthy. He is tall and slight in form. The Soviet Russian anthropologist and scientist N.Y.A. Mar V.V. Bonchnak and R.M. Muchchavi and I.M. Danyokov, E.I. Kirpinov, and G.A. Malkashnozvi wrote, Among English, the Caucasian type is preserved better than among any other North Caucasian nation. Professor of Anthropology V.V. Bonnek, Gozlowski, Ruch Bunch, 1935, Professor G.F. Debates recognized that English Caucasian anthropologic type is the most Caucasian among Caucasians. And so here are some pictures of the English people, just so you can get sort of a visual representation of what the English people look like. Their features are very interesting, slightly unique. I can't speak right now. But basically they have black hair. Their skin can seem to be a bit tanned, and their noses are slightly curvature. But these are the English here. So the English are a people who live in the Caucasus. Let's summarize everything up. They live in the Caucasus. They speak a Northeast Caucasian language, Nak Dagestan. According to their oral history, they come from the Fertile Crescent and they went to the Caucasus. Genetically, they have high amounts of haplogroup J2 associated with the Fertile Crescent. Phenotypically, they have black hair, white to tan skin, and hooked nose. To me, they resemble light-skinned Middle Easterners. Like when I look at them, they kind of seem like the lighter version of a Middle Easterner. They have the typical phenotype most people associate with Semitic people, even though they are not Semitic people. They are Caucasian. Like these are Caucasians. These aren't Semites, even though they have that phenotype people will associate with Semites. Anyways, that being said, let's now shift our attention to the Chechens. So the Chechen, again, is a Northeast Caucasian language. The Chechens, historically also known as the Kits, and the Zhuks, are a Northeast Caucasian linguistic family of the Nak peoples native to the North Caucasus in Eastern Europe. Chechen and English peoples are collectively known as the Vanak, which means our people in Chechen, since the 1930s, and were known as Nak Cherry prior. So Chechnya, officially, the Chechen Republic is the constituted republic of Russia, situated in the North Caucasus in Eastern Europe, close to the Caspian Sea. And here is the map of the country of Chechnya. So prehistory and origin. The Chechens are one of the Nak peoples who have lived in the highlands of the North Caucasus region since prehistory. There is archaeological evidence of historical continuity dating back to 3000 BC, as well as evidence pointing to their ancestors migrating from the Fertile Crescent 10,000 through 8,000 BC. And again, they have a similar history to the English. Migration from the Fertile Crescent 10,000 through 8,000 BC. Joanna Nichols holds that the Zhuks were descended from extremely ancient migrations from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus, perhaps due to population or political pressures back in the Fertile Crescent. Others who believe the so-called Uratrian version, such as George Archbenz and Abjad Majhut, still holds that those original migrants contributed to both the genetic and cultural traits of the modern English and Chechens, but that the primary ancestors were Nak-speaking migrants from what became northeastern Urartu. And again, just showing that migration from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus. So Corax's culture, towns were built in the area that is now Chechnya as early as 8,000 BCE. Pottery too came around the same time, and so did stone weaponry, stone utensils, stone jewelry items, etc., as well as clay dishes. This period was known as the Core Araxes culture. The Core Araxes culture is another important ancient Near Eastern culture that you should take the time to study. I'll cover them in the future, but you should take your own time to study. So here is the Core Araxes culture. Again, it's pretty much in the South Caucasus, and it goes a little bit into Eastern Anatolia and a little bit into Iran. So This is the Wyanakt culture. The trend of a high progressive caucus continued as early as 3000 through 4000 BCE. Evidence of metalworking, including copper, as well as more advanced weaponry such as daggers, arrowheads found, as well as armor, knives, etc. This period is referred to as the Kaynet culture, or the Chechnya during the Copper Age. Horseback riding came around 3000 BCE, probably having diffused from contact with Indo-European speaking tribes to the north. Towns found in this period are often not found as ruins, but rather on the outskirts of or inside modern towns of both Chechnya and Ingushtenia, suggesting much continuity. There is bone evidence suggesting that raising of small sheep and goats occurred. Clay and stone were used for all building purposes. Agriculture was highly developed, as evidenced by the presence of copper flint blades with wooden or bone handles. So the Koban culture. The Koban culture is an Iron Age culture. Was the most advanced culture in Chechnya before recorded history, and also the most well-known. It first appeared between 1100 and 1000 BCE. The remains include dwellings, cobble bridges, altars, iron objects, bones, and clay and stone objects. There were sissels and stone grain grinders. Grains that were grown included wheat, rye, and barley. Sheep, cattle, goats, donkeys, pigs, and horses were kept. There were shops where artisans worked on and sold pottery, stone casing, bone carving, and stone carving. There is evidence of advanced stages of metallurgy. There was a diversification and professionals organized within clans. Jim Nonek argues that while all these cultures probably were made by people, including among the genetic ancestors of the Chechens, it was either the Koban or the Katunokchi culture that was the first culture made by the cultural and linguistic ancestors of the Chechens, meaning the Chechens first arrived in their homeland 3,400 years ago. However, the majority of historians disagree, holding that Chechens have lived in their present-day lands for over 10,000 years. So, various interpretations on the relationship with Urartu and Uratrians and Hurrians. So, Iger Denkoff, Fritz Hobel, and others have suggested ties between the Proto-Uratrian language and the Proto-Northeast Caucasian languages, leading to the proposal of the Aldrian language family. Adamajid Jenocha notes in his book, The Chechens, some authorities believe that the Nak nation was the offspring of the Hurrians and Uratrian builders of the magnificent civilizations of the Near East that had a profound influence upon other cultures of the region. According to some modern data, Chechens are genetically, linguistically, and anthropologically considered the descendants of the Hurrians and the Uratrians. And when you learn who the Hurrians are, it starts to tie all the information together, specifically concerning certain genetic papers that recently came out. And so this is all important information. So here is the ancient Hurrian kingdom. Hurrian kingdom was situated in the southern Caucasus. It was close to the land of Canaan, the empire of Akkad. It was east of Anatolia, west. It was, situated near eastern Anatolia, western Iran, and southern Caucasus. And here is Urartu. Again, it basically does just overlap the Hurrian homeland, basically being situated in the Southern Caucasus. And so, according to the opinion of Caucasus folklorist Abjad, all right, actually, I'll let Yeshua read this one. I need a drink of water.
All right. According to the opinion of Caucasus folklorist Amjad Jamukha, it is certain that the Nak constituted an important component of the Hurrian Urartian tribes in the Transcaucasus and played a role in development of their influential cultures. It has been noted that at many points, Urartu, in fact, descended through Kakheti in the North Caucasus. Jamoka notes in his book. The kingdom of Urartu, which was made up of several small states, flourished in the 9th and 7th centuries BCE and extended to the North Caucasus at the peaks of its power. Urartologist Paul Zemansky argues that the Urartians likely originally hailed from Iraq and likely merely constituted a small ruling class. Jamuka notes that the first confirmed appearance of the consolidated Vanak nation in the North Caucasus, spanning the range the Zygi would later have, with a few additions later, was after the fall of Urartu, and notes that numerous people think that they were a regathering of Nak tribes fleeing the crumbling state. The ancient Greek chronicler Strabo mentions that mythological Gargarians had migrated from Eastern Asia Minor, Urartu, to North Caucasus. Jamoka notes that Gargarians is one of many Nak roots, Gagara meaning in fact kindred in Proto-Nak.
A discussion of their origins is intertwined with the discussion of the mysterious origins of the Nak peoples as a whole. The only three surviving Nak peoples are Chechens, English, and Bats, but they are thought by some others to be the remnants of what was once a larger family of peoples. So keep in mind, in ancient times, there could have been more than just the Chechens and the English, but these are the last remaining peoples, but there definitely was probably more of these tribes. So anyways, it reads, they are thought to be either the descendant from original settlers of the Caucasus, North and or South, or supposedly Nak-speaking ethnic minorities in the northeastern regions of the ancient state of Urartu, whose people also spoke a language that was possibly related to the Nak languages. The two theories are not mutually incompatible, and there has been much evidence that seems to link the two, either by dual origins or the return theory, in which the Nak peoples originally lived in the Caucasus, migrated down to the south, lived there for a long period of time, and then returned to the Caucasus. And by the way, I believe in that theory. And I'm going to go over why I do, but I do believe in that theory that they're from the Caucasus, they migrated into the Fertile Crescent, and then migrated back to the Caucasus. He's on fire! The theory that I'm going to explain to you all a little bit later. So according to the opinion of Caucasus folklorist Abjad Jamukha, it is certain that the Nak constituted an important component of the Hurrian Urartian tribes in the Transcaucasus and played a role in the development of their influential cultures. Abjad Jamukha notes in his book, The Chechens, some authorities believe that the Nak language was the Nak nation was an offspring of the Hurrians and the Urartian builders of the magnificent civilizations of the Near East. Sorry, I already read this, but I'm going to just go ahead and read it again. Of the Near East, that had a profound influence on other cultures of the region. According to some data, Chechens are genetically, linguistically, and anthropologically considered the descendants of the Hurrians and the Urartians. I didn't mean to put that in there twice. I accidentally added that. But anyways, here is the region of the Hurrians. You can see in this kind of darkish, reddish brown that basically they're situated from the Southern Caucasus and Eastern Anatolia all the way into Iran. This is basically the whole geographical region of the Hurrians. And you see right here in like this orange color where Urartu would have been. And here is Lake Van. And also, you know, here's just the Mitanni Empire, just in case you want to know the Mitanni Empire. And so what's kind of interesting about this is that, you know, all these groups are pretty much overlapping and surrounded Semitic people like the Assyrians. You see the Assyrian Empire right here, and they're pretty much just on top of Semitic people. So it's very, very interesting. He's on fire! So this is a quote from a Russian book that I shall not pronounce because I do not speak Russian, but it came out in 1999. And you can find the book by using the ISBN. But anyways, the English translation says, this sounds extremely unexpected, but it is. The Chechen nation is the ethnic group, is the ethnic root part of the Caucasian race. One of the oldest sources of human civilization, the fundamental principle of spirituality passed through the Hurrian, Mitanni, and Urartian cultures. And we've been over, you know, the Mitanni. We slightly discussed the Hurrians and Urartians. We'll dig deeper into these ancient peoples and civilizations, but this writer is associating the Chechens with the Hurrians, the Mitanni, and the Urartians. So again, here is a map of the Mitanni Empire. It's in modern day Syria. And again, the Mitanni people were a mixture of Caucasian Hurrians, which were non-Semitic people, and Indo-Iranians, if you remember from previous presentations. And this is in the Middle East. And you see the Hurrians a little bit to the north. And here's Urartu, as I said many times before. Urartu is in the Southern Caucasus. So here's another writer right here, Ornteneli Albiri. The English translation says, most of the historical facts indicate that the language of the ancient state of Urartu is closer to the modern Chechen one. It is highly probable that the ancestors of modern Chechens moved to the territory of North Caucasus from Anatolia from Urartu. And here's another book, ATLS Monthly Geography and the Exploration Magazine, March 2003, issue 1202. English translation, it says, today's Urartians do not deny the kinship of the Chechens with Urartians. The kinship of the Hurrians, Urartians, Chechens is confirmed by those who studied it. Hence, the following conclusion follows. Chechens and Urartians, Chechens are Urartians. Urartians is the remaining branch of the Chechens in Asia Minor. Actually, its structure grammatically features completeness and grammar of classes, etc. Urartian and Chechen are similar to each other. Here is another book, and I believe this is also in Russian. Yeah, this is also in Russian. But it came out, one version came out in 1991, page 85, and another version came out in 1935, page 2029. And so it says, Chechens are not actually Caucasians, but ethnically and linguistically sharply separate from other mountain peoples of the Caucasus. They are the offspring of the great Hyperborean Paleo-Asian tribes displayed to the Caucasus, which extend from Turin through North Caucasus into Canaan. You'll see why that's important later. Anyways, the Chechen is a leaping Chechen is a leaping northern offspring of the proto-language, which once occupied a more southern territory, namely in the pre-Armenian, Aldrian, Urartian, Western Asia. Traces of Chechens stay in the country of Ararat or Urartu are found in toponymically as Chechnya. This alone explains the strongly Aldoian-Eritrean Armenoid character of the Chechen language, which deviates from the normal Caucasian sound system. So here is Urartu. I don't know if I actually have showed a few pictures, but here's a different, picture of Urartu. A more, I guess you say, more accurate image, depending on the time periods, as you can see right here. This was comprised of the boundaries in 2008. Basically, they stretched from the southern Caucasus in Armenia all the way west into Turkey, north of Syria, and all the way east into Iran. So it was quite an extended civilization. And this is Urartu. So the Eritreans themselves are Aldoians, called their country and state Blenheim, from which comes the modern name of Lake Van. In the basin of which the center of this state was located since ancient times, Eritrean Aldoian tribes akin to the Hurrian population of the countries to the southwest of Lake Van lived around Lake Van and in adjacent areas. The Eritrean, as well as the Hurrian language, belong to a special linguistic family. Among the modern languages and closest to them are some languages of the North Caucasus, Chechen, and English. And you can find this in a paper done in 1985 on page 7. Again, it's in Russian. And so here is Lake Van. And here, by the way, is an image of Greater Armenia, basically all the various land masses that Armenia once held in ancient times, from the Byzantine Armenia to Sicilia, Armenia, to Greater Armenia and Soviet Armenia. And but basically this dark green part of Greater Armenia was typically the landmass of Armenia. Armenian people once had a way larger landmass than they do today. Seems like that's the case for a lot of ancient peoples. But anyways, here is another book written in Russian, or well, actually, this might be German. But anyways, this was written by Wilhelm. Oh yeah, it's definitely German. Wilhelm Gernot, 1982. It says the long-standing assumptions about the connections of Hurrian Eritrean with the Caucasian languages have received serious confirmation thanks to the located correspondence indicated in the Northeast Caucasian languages, and especially in the Vanak. And again, just showing you another map of the Hurrian area. Again, south of the Caucasus. I'm showing you this over and over again so you can kind of get just a visual representation. I'm a very visual person. So here's another book written in 1982. And again, this is actually in Russian. It says the most ancient state of the territory of our country was the Eritrean kingdom in the Transcaucasus. The word Urartu, the memory of it is preserved in the name of Mount Ararat, is Assyrian, but the inhabitants called their country Blenheim Nili, hence Lake Van. Blenheim Nili means Lake Van, by the way. I might just start saying that. But anyways, the Aldoian or Eritrean tribes living around this lake who spoke a language that has not survived to this day of the modern ones, the Chechen and the English, are the closest to it. Back in the 13th century BC, created their own tribal union. And here's another book written in 2008. You can find it on page 371. And it says, of the peoples existing in our time, the Chechens and the English are the closest to the Hurrian Eritrean in terms of language. And again, here is the Eritrean homeland where they come from and where they will disperse from. So the Chechens belong to Haplogroup J2 at 56.7%, which is associated with Mediterranean, Caucasian, and Fertile Crescent populations. The overwhelming bulk of Chechen J2 is of the subclade J2A for B star or J2-M67, of which the highest frequencies by far are found among the Nak peoples. Chechens were 55.2% according to the Balachovi study, while English were 87.4%. Overall, tests have shown consistently that Chechens are most closely related to English, Saracenians, and other North Caucasians, occasionally showing a kinship to other groups in some tests. Blanovsky study showed the English to be the Chechens' closest relatives by far. And I think we kind of get that after everything we've just said. So here's a good map of haplogroup J2. You see a very high concentration in the Caucasus, particularly in that region where the Chechens and English are. Again, they have some of the highest amounts of haplogroup J. This is very important. And the anthropology, this by the way was published in 2017, page 131, and it reads, the anthropology of the Chechens and English is somewhat different. The Chechens belong to the central cluster of the Caucasian Mtumbid phenotype, or anthrotype, with pronounced brachicocephalization, which indicates a strong mixing with the Koban culture, whereas the Chechens, although they belong mainly to the Caucasians, Mtibids, combine many elements of the Caspian and even Puntid. All this testifies that the Chechens, to a greater extent, have preserved the Hurrian substrate. So if you want to get a good idea of what Hurrians look like, looking at Chechens is a good example. So here are Chechens. Again, these people, they are Caucasian, and they have, tan skin, dark hair. Sometimes they can be a bit, I guess you could say pale or white. But again, they still have dark hair, dark eyes. And again, these are the Chechens of the Caucasus. Dark-haired people, straight hair and wavy hair, white to tan-skinned Caucasians, Chechens. And a lot of them, by the way, are very militant, as you can see. If you look up Chechens, you're going to find a lot of like images of them with guns and stuff and in militias. As a matter of fact, if you watch the news about these guys, there's a lot of issues between them and Russia. But yeah, these are the Chechens. And some of them can have blue eyes and really dark brunette hair, or even grayish green eyes. But again, these are the Chechens. So in summary, the Chechen are a people who live in the Caucasus. The Chechens speak a Northeast Caucasian language, Nak-Dagestan. They have a linguistic connection to Hurro-Uratrian languages. According to their oral history, they came from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus. They have connections to the Hurrian and Uratrian civilization. Genetically, they have high amounts of haplogroup J2 associated with the Fertile Crescent. Phenotypically, they have black hair, white to tan skin, and hooked or straight noses. They resemble light-skinned Middle Easterners, again, to me. They have the typical phenotype that most people associate with Semitic. Even though they aren't Semitic people, keep in mind they are Caucasians. With that being said, let's now shift our attention to the Nak and combine everything we know. Let's combine it all. So the Nak, basically, which consists of the English and the Chechen. So the Nak peoples, today partly also known as the Vanak peoples, are the speakers of the Vanak languages. These are chiefly the ethnic Chechen, English, and Bats peoples of the North Caucasus, including closely related minor or historical groups. So the Nak languages are a language are a group of languages within the Northeast Caucasian family, spoken chiefly by the Chechens and the English in the Northern Caucasus. Again, just visualizing all this for you guys. And so the English and the Chechen and English and Bats people are also grouped under the ethno-linguistic umbrella of Nak peoples. The Nak language were historically classified as an independent North Central Caucasian language family, but are now recognized as a branch of the Northeast Caucasian family. The separation of the Nak from common Northeast Caucasian has been tentatively dated to the Neolithic 4th millennium BC. Iger Denkov and Sergony Starstman have suggested that Nak is distinctly related to Hurartian, which they include as a branch of the Northeastern Caucasian language family, which were dubbed Alduin languages by Denkov. The Nak have been referred to by various names, including Dured Zux in medieval Arab, Georgian, and Armenian ethnography. Historical linguists, including Joanna Nichols, have connected ancestral Nak languages and their distinct relatives to a Neolithic migration from the Fertile Crescent. Another view, not necessarily contradicting the previous one, posits a migration of Nak into the present-day location in the North Caucasus during the Classical era, following the collapse of Urartu. So that the Vanak Chechen English dialect continuum. So again, the Chechen people are Caucasian native ethnic group, and the English people are a Caucasian native ethnic group of the North Caucasus, mostly inhabiting the Russian Republic of Ingushutia. So a 2011 study by Ogul Blinovsky and a number of other geneticists showed that the Y DNA haplogroup J2A4B star, a subgroup of J2 located mainly in the Middle East, Caucasus, and Mediterranean, was highly associated with the Nak peoples. This is why they're important. J2A4B accounted for the majority of the Y chromosome of English and Chechen men, with the English having as much higher percentage, 87.4%, than Chechens, who had 51 through 58% of the region. The Chechens and the English have the highest frequencies of J2A4B star yet reported. And this is why they're very important people. So now let's go a little bit into the languages and the connections and everything. So this is a good book to read, Ancient Anatolia. It says the Hurartian is as a whole shared a yet earlier common ancestor with some of the numerous comparatively obscure languages of the Caucasus is not improbable. Sorry. Modern Caucasian languages are conventionally divided into Southern, Northwestern, and Northeastern languages. Georgian, for example, belongs to the Southern family. Denkov and Starstman in the most thorough attempt to finding a linkage yet published have argued that Hurartian is a branch of the Eastern Caucasian family. This would make it a distinct relative of such modern languages as Chechen, Avar, Lak, and Ubi. And so when you think of the Hurrians and the Ratarians, think of these Caucasian peoples. And again, just showing you a map of where Hurarian was spoken. All right, so here's a very good book on the Chechens and the English. Even though the book is called Chechens, it deals also with the English. You should check this book out. So let's get into it. It says, on the other hand, the North Caucasian perspective goes back to the most ancient of Caucasian cultures, dating back to more than 5 millennium ago. For thousands of years, the Vanak lived in the North Caucasian, the North Caucasian dominacy, which waxed the waned as invaders and came and went, but was preserved more or less intact due to the nation's remarkable tensity. Linguistic evidence ties back culture to the ancient Hurrian and Eritrean civilizations that flourished in the Near East a few millennium ago. The Vak also constitute an important element in the Neolithic Core-Araxes culture in the Trans-Caucasus. Again, here's the Core-Araxes culture region. It may be useful to construct a virtual model of Proto-North Caucasian culture that did not necessarily imply or deny a common root, but presupposes at least some active cultural interaction at some points in the histories of the North Caucasian peoples, say at the age of the great cultures, the Mycope, the Mito, the Sindika, Core-Araxes, and others. The term Nak peoples refers to the Chechens, English, Kites, and Tozvatush, or the Bats, all of whom speak languages of the Nak branch of Northeast Caucasian and share common descent and culture. Again, here's this region. Vak history is perhaps the most poorly studied among most of the various peoples of the North Caucasus. For example, up to the end of the 19th century, archaeologists in general considered that the North Caucasians settled in present-day Dominical during the Iron Age, at most 3,000 years ago. E. Vandenbundium, citing Stone Age evidence, regarded that their settlement took place much earlier. Though evidence of Nak steps of settlement was found on the southern slopes of the Caucasus in the 2nd and 1st millennium BC, he did not rule out the possibility of their residence in the north and eastern region of the Caucasus. It is traditionally accepted that the Vanak have existed in the Caucasus with their present territory as a nucleus for the greater Dominical for thousands of years, and that it was the birthplace of their ethnos, to which the peoples who inhabited the Central Caucasus and the steep lands all the way to the Volga in the northeast and the Caspian Sea to the east contributed. Some authorities believe that the Nak nation was the offspring of the Hurrians and the Eritrean builders of magnificent civilizations in the Near East that had profound influence upon other cultures of the region. It is certain that the Nak constituted an important component of the Hurrian Eritrean tribes in the Trans-Caucasus and played a role in the development of their influential cultures. E.A. Spencer in 1941 suggested that the Trans-Caucasus was the original Hurrian homeland, the Trans-Caucasus. Some scholars have proposed the existence of a linguistic and cultural Northeast Caucasian and Hurrian, later Eritrean, septual continuum. So here is the homeland of the Hurrians, as you can see on this map, and here is the homeland of Ratu, and they basically kind of overlap each other. So Core-Araxes culture. The Core-Araxes culture called after the river valleys in the Trans-Caucasus, where excavations reveal its remains extended from the 4th through /3rd millennium BC to the early Bronze Age. It was one of the major civilizations of its time, on par with those of Mesopotamia, with which it established trade relations. This culture is considered indigenous to the Caucasus, and one of its important variants is believed to have been established by the ancestors of the Nak Dagestanis. It is believed that the Hurrian civilization gave rise to this trans-Caucasian Neolithic culture, which later spread to parts of Asia Minor and the Middle East. And here's, again, the region of the Caucasus, and Hurrians descend from the core Araxes people. So the core Araxes was continuous and had mutual influences with the Mycot culture in the Northwest Caucasus, according to E.I. Kurpnov. There were elements of the Mycot culture in the early memorials of Chechnya and Ingushetia, in the Kigna and the Mikin and Benuk Kyrgyzs, in the Lungovi and Surzeknik Yakurts. The economy of the Korax culture was based on agriculture and cattle breeding. Contacts were maintained with highland tribes of Asia Minor and Western Asia, according to Karapnov in 1961. Page 67 through 7. Skipping down, it says the pottery had a dark and polished surface in the northern Caucasus of a red color. And we'll deal more with the pottery later, but that's one of the interesting and important elements of the core Araxes culture is their pottery, because we do find it in a lot of areas of the ancient Near East. Cover that later though. So the most probable theory of the Nak ancestry is that it was the reunion of the Caucasian Nak, the location of whose original domicile is still a moot point. In some of the Uratrian elements of their breakup of the kingdom of Urartu, with the Transcaucasus being the most likely locality at which this fusion took place. It is thought that the Proto-Caucasian Nak and Proto-Hurrians had common ancestry. Thus, at least part of the genealogy of the Nak peoples can be attributed to the Hurrians and their descendants, the Uratrians. The Hurrians, from Hurrians to modern Vanak, there were many nation tribes that can be viewed as forming connecting links in the genealogical chain. Some Uratrian tribes were incorporated into these peoples, but the Vanak and the Tolva Tusnians resisted assimilation and are considered as the only linguistic and ethnic remnant of the Hurrians and the Uratrians. Again, here's a map of Urartu. So I will let Yeshu read this one while I get a drink of water.
All right. It says, despite the obscurity of their origins, the Hurrians became one of the great and influential peoples in the Near East from the 3rd millennium BC to the 14th BC. Their original homeland was probably the South Caucasus down to the Armenian Plateau and the Zagros-Taurus Mountains. Later, they expanded to Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and northern Syria. The Hurrian language was neither Indo-European nor Semitic, but was akin to the Northeast Caucasian languages or Aloridian languages, descendants of Urartian, including Chechen and Lesgian. Hurrian civilizations reached its acme in the period from the 6th to the 14th century BC. The generally accepted date for the downfall of Hurrian civilization is 1365 BC. The numerous clans of the Hurrians, such as the Gutis, the Hatians, the Kassites, established the Kassite kingdom of Babylon in the 15th century BC. The Kurti, the Proto-Kurds, the Mitannis, the Muski, and the Iratians formed empires and city-states which bore their names. The Kiraxis culture is also attributed to the Hurrians. It is generally accepted that a number of small Hurrian states gradually united to form the empire of the Mitanni.
And as I keep reminding the audience over and over again, the Hurrians are very important people to study, especially when we get into some genetic papers in the long future when I return back to Yeshub's channel. But keep all this in mind about the Hurrians. Most importantly, the Hurrian language was neither Indo-European nor Semitic. And in the future, you'll see why these Hurrians are so important to us when we're studying the ancient Near East. And they're a very influential people, as you can see, being connected to Gutians, Hattians, Kazites, Mitannis, and all these ancient civilizations in the Near East. So here is a map of where the Mitanni Empire would have been. Here is the territory of the Hurrians. Here is Urartu. I show this map quite often, and it's a very important map. Here's Kurdia. So very, very important. The Hurrians were so ubiquitous that many Indo-Iranian and Indo-Europeans are believed to have substantially Hurrian contributions in their ethnogenesis. For example, the Kurds consider themselves and their culture as descendants of the Hurrians and their civilization, despite linguistic differentiation. There are also suggests that the ancestors of the Armenians were a mixture of Hurrians and Indo-European Peruvians. However, linguistic evidence suggests that the Northeast Caucasians are the genuine descendants of the Hurrians. So the genuine descendants of Hurrians today would be Northeast Caucasian peoples and those related to them. So the Mitanni. The Empire of Mitanni appeared in 1550 BC, probably to the southwest of Armenian Plateau, and was made up at least partially of Hurrian subjects, although there is some indication that the ruling class was of Indo-European extraction. Hurrian was used as the language of state. Mitanni annexed to Syria in 1472 BC. The Mitanni culture is a unique blend of native Hurrian tradition and Sumerian and Akkadian cultural inputs, had in no small measure influenced the civilization of the Hittites and other peoples. The Mitannis perfected the two-wheeled war chariot, which had such a large impact on warfare from the 15th century BC. Mitanni was undone in 13 BC after having been subjected first to the Hittite and then Assyrian attacks. So again, just kind of showing you where all these civilizations are. So in the dark reddish brown is the Hurrians. Over here is the Mitanni in green, and let's see what else I can find. And of course, the orange right here is Urartu. But I just talked about the Mitanni, so this is what it is in green right here. So Chechen, English, and Kites, considered by some authorities as a derivative dialect of Chechen, and Tuscan or Baksi, makeup of Nak branch of the Nak Dagestani or Northeast Caucasian family, which comprises more than 30 languages, most of which are spoken in Dagestan. The language group is indigenous to the Caucasus and is comparable in age to Indo-European. The split of the Nak branch from the rest of the family took place about 5,000 through 6,000 years ago. So here's that region of where it's spoken, the Dagestan. So J. Nichols proposed that the Nak Dagestan language family is long indigenous to the Caucasus, suggesting a fairly seamless archaeological continuity for the last 8,000 years or more in central Dagestan. This is also reinforced by the distribution of loanwords from ancient Mesopotamia into early Dagestani. The structure of the Nak Dagestani family tree and the greatest divergence within and between branches lying in the southern reaches would suggest a pre-Proto-Nak-Dangestanis spreading into the Caucasus from the southwest. A cuneiform style of writing and runic type inscriptions are found on ancient monuments in Chechnya, some dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. However, no serious work has been done to interpret them. Nakat has roots that can be traced to some languages of ancient Mesopotamia. There is a general consensus that that the Hurrian, Uratrian, and Nak-Dangestani language families are connected. I.M. Denkoff and S.A. Starston in 1986 have demonstrated more than 100 common roots between the two languages. And there is Proto-Uratrian. So here's another book called The Vanaks, another good book to read to learn about these Caucasian peoples, specifically the Chechens and the Ingish. The book says, this is a book about the Chechens and the Ingish, the kindred nations of the North Caucasus. The Chechens and the Ingish have common origin and similar language and culture, but owing to the force of historical coincidence and circumstances, they have developed into as separate nations who nevertheless are fully aware of their unity. And apart from their national self names, Chechens and Ingish have their common name, the Vanaks, our people, i.e. our people. From a linguistic point of view, these languages mainly belong to 3 lingual families, Caucasian proper, or Paleo-Caucasian, Indo-European, and Altian. The Caucasian family is divided into 3 groups: Western, Eastern, and Southern. The representatives of the Caucasian family are the ancient inhabitants of the Caucasus, related to each other by common origin. The Western group consists of 2 groups, the Algini and the Azba, or Azbanian branches, and the Azginis, or Caesarians, one of the most numerous and far-famed peoples of the Caucasus, still densely populated a vast territory from the Black Sea coast of the Middle Tarnak as far as the first half of the 19th century. The eastern branch of the Caucasian languages is divided into 2 subgroups, the Vanak and Dangestani branches. The Vanaks, as is generally known, is a collective name of the Chechens and the Ingish. It should be noted that the area of spread of the Paleo-Caucasian languages gradually grew narrower for the space of epochs. Several millennia ago, the tribes speaking the Caucasian families apparently inhabited not only the whole Caucasus or most of its parts, but also the areas far out of its limits. According to some scientists, certain nations of the ancient Near East, including the Goths, Hattians, Proto-Hattians, the Castanians, Hurtians, or Hurrians, the Urartuians, and others, were ethnically close to different branches of the Paleo-Caucasian family. Proceeded from this, the Paleo-Caucasians, i.e. Aboriginals of the place of settlement of alien tribes, took part in the ethnography of the majority of peoples inhabiting the Caucasus today and speaking the languages of Indo-European and Turkic system. This is also confirmed by anthropological data. As early as the 4th and 1st centuries BC, the Caucasus was one of the centuries of highly developed bronze metallurgy. In the Northern Caucasus and Trans-Caucasus are found the burials of tribal nobility, 3rd through 2nd centuries BC, containing the richest jewelry, gold plates, silverware, weapons. Archaeological data shows significantly high levels of cultural and social and cultural development in the Caucasus between the 3rd and the 2nd centuries BC. The influence of the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia and Anatolia on the culture of the Caucasian tribes of the Bronze Age is evident. On the other hand, one can observe the cultural influence of the Caucasus on the vast region of the Western Europe. Urartu was an ancient state in the Caucasus, 9th to the 4th centuries BC, comprising a vast region of southern Transcaucasia. The native tongue of the ethnic kernel of this state apparently was close to the Avant Dangestani linguistic group. When discussing the matter of the origin of the Vanaks, it is also important to take into consideration that their genetic affiliation to the eastern branch of the Caucasian ethno-linguistic family. According to some scientists, the tribes speaking the Eastern Caucasian Vanak Dangestani and the languages cognate to them inhabited not only the eastern part of the North Caucasus and Transcaucasia, but also the territory of Front Asia right up to the Zagros, Mesopotamia, Syria, and Asia Minor, quite possibly penetrating into certain islands of the Mediterranean. In particular, the thesis of kinship of ancestors in the Vanak Dangestani peoples with the Hurrians and the Rothrians, the cultural nations in ancient times who formed the powerful states of the ancient Near East in the 2nd through 1st millennium BC, carries more conviction, as it is proposed that Proto-Eritrean and other Eastern Caucasian languages are related to each other nearly the same way as ancient written languages of the Indo-European family. And here's another book, The Origin of the Chechen in English, a study of Alpine linguistic and ethnic geography. Again, I just want y'all to really kind of understand these people. So the Chechens and their Western neighbors, the English, are distinct ethnic groups with distinct languages, but also closely related and so similar that it is confident to describe them together, that it is convenient to describe them together. English, Chechen and English together with Bats and Tozvostush, minority language of Georgia, make up the Nak branch of the Nak Dangestani or Northeast Caucasian language family. The split of the Nak branch from the rest of the family took place about 5,000 through 6,000 years ago. Thus, the Nak Dangestani family is comprised in age to Indo-European. The language family ancestral to English, French, Russian, Greek, Hindu, though the split of the Chechen from the English probably dates back only to the Middle Ages. So with all that being said, now let's get into the DNA, connecting DNA and language. So this study called Parallel Evolution of Genes and Languages in the Caucasus region. This is a very important study. With everything that we've just learned, let's sort of connect it all together. So it says, we also employ a lexiconal statistical approach to reconstruct the history of the languages of the North Caucasian family spoken in the Caucasus. We found a different major haplogroup to be prevalent in each of 4 sets of populations that occupy distinct geographical regions and belong to different linguistic branches. The haplogroup frequencies correlate with geography and even more strongly with language. Keep that in mind. The haplogroup frequencies correlate with geography and even more strongly with language. So within haplogroups, a number of haplotype clusters were shown to be specific to individual populations and languages. The data suggests a direct origin of Caucasus male lineages from the Near East, followed by high levels of isolation, differentiation, and genetic drift ensued. Compression of genetic and linguistic constructions covering the last few millennium showed striking correspondence between the topology and the dates of the respective gene and linguistic and language families, and with documented historical events. Overall, the Caucasus region unmatched levels of gene gene language coevolution occurred within the geographical isolated populations, probably due to its mountainous terrain. So, one of the main parts of this paper, again, I'm going to read it, and it's the most important. Again, haplogroup J2A4B-M67 comprise 51 through 79% of the Y chromosomes in the English and 3 Chechen populations, Northeast Caucasian, Nakak linguistic group. Finally, J1 star M67 comprise 44 through 99% of the Avar, the Durgan, the Kats, and the Kubachi, and the Luzins, Northeast Caucasus Dagestan languages. So again, they have the most of J1 and J2. Here is that region, people, and language group. And so further it reads, the MDS plot of pairwise genetic distance shows strong regional clustering separating populations from the Near East and the Caucasus, with samples from the Caucasus grouping together to the Near East samples, to Near East samples than to European ones. Of these 3 clusters, the Caucasus appears to be the most diverse, with distinguishable subgroup variants within it. The first subgroup included Dagestan speakers, Avar, Dargins, Kubachi, and Katak. The second, Nak speakers, 3 Chechen populations, and the English. And the third, the Abzako Debjum speakers, the Abzak, Sarsians, and Shabgug. This plot illustrates both the common Near Eastern background of all Caucasus populations. This is the main part y'all need to hear and keep in mind. This plot illustrates both the common Near Eastern background of all Caucasus populations and the pronounced inter-Caucasus genetic differentiation into groupings that correspond well with the linguistic affiliation. So here is shows that Caucasus populations and Near East populations are very similar. Caucasus populations and Near East populations. Why? Eastern populations very close to Caucasian populations. And again, Caucasians are non-Semitic people. So let's keep going. Oh, and here's another chart, by the way. Here's the genetic tree. Here's the linguistic tree, basically showing how from North Caucasian comes Northeast Caucasian. Then it splits into the Dagestan and the Nakat. And here are the related peoples, like the Chechens and the English. So the linguistic tree matches the genetic tree, basically, which is quite obvious as we've been going on over and over again. So, combining genetic and linguistic findings, we now comprise a model of the evolution of the Caucasian of the Caucasus. The family tree was obtained by merging the genetic clusters with the background linguistic tree. We conclude that the Caucasus gene pool originated from a subset of Near Eastern pool due to the Upper Paleolithic or Neolithic migrations, followed by significant genetic drift, probably due to isolation in the extremely mountainous regions. And so here is a chart, a Y chromosomal chart showing the high amounts, the various haplogroups of Caucasian populations. And so basically I want to show you guys is who has the highest amounts of J. So here's the English and 3 Chechen populations. So dealing with haplogroup J1, they have up to 87%. When it comes to the English, and the Chechens have around 50%. Now, when it comes to the other populations, like the Avars, the Durgans, the Chubachi, the Kats, and the Luzians, they have up to 99%, 85%, and so on and so forth of haplogroup J2. So Caucasian populations, Caucasian peoples have the highest amounts of J. And this is quite important. Again, here's another map showing that. Here are the populations. Here is J1. Here are the references, by the way, up to 98% to 50%. Caucasians have high amounts of J1. And you can basically just say up to 100% because 98.5, that's a lot. And here is the population, such as the English and the Chechens. Here are the references, and they have up to 87.4% of J2. That's quite a bit as well. So the Vanaks. Now let's kind of go back into phenotype just a little bit. So the Caucasian type is spread in the region of the Greater Caucasus on both sides of the region. People of this type are a large structure, broad face, and color of eyes and hair within the considerable touch of light tints, such as dark haired and a round head. Let's actually look into these groups. So here is the Mitz-Tibid type. Region type of the Caucasus Mountains. Mitz-Tibids are typical of the Georgian population, with common among Chechens and English. So this is like the typical phenotype of the Chechen and the English. Light brown skin, straight or wavy, usually brown hair, boralicocephalic, which basically means a round head. You see right here where they're concentrated. And the groups that they're related to is people like the Armenoids and the Alpines and the Drinids. Anyways, so the English, let's just go over their phenotype again. This is the English phenotype, and the Chechen, this is the Chechen phenotype. And so in summary, so what we have, so we have a good idea of who the Nak people are. The Nak are, also known as the Chechens and the English, are linguistically Northeast Caucasian speakers under the Nak Dagestan language. Genetically, they are Caucasian, being related to other Caucasian groups. They possess the highest amounts of haplogroup J1 and J2, and phenotypically, they are Caucasian, white to tan skin, black hair, hooked and straight noses. So now let's look into the Nak and the Fertile Crescent. Now, this is quite important. So what's fascinating to me about the Nak people is that it's heavily believed that they came from the Fertile Crescent and migrated into the Caucasus. This, of course, was based on language, anthropology, and oral history. The Chechens are one of the Nak peoples who live in the highlands of the North Caucasus region since prehistory. There is archaeological evidence. There's archaeological evidence of historical continuity dating back to 3000 BC, as well as evidence pointing to their ancestors migrating from the Fertile Crescent 10,000 through 8,000 BC, basically coming from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus. The Proto-Northeast Caucasian language had many terms for agriculture, and Joanna Nichols has suggested that its speakers may have been involved in the development of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent and only later moved north to the Caucasus. According to Bernice Winstrich article, Peering into the Past with the Words, Joanna Nichols showed the linguistic evidence indicates that ancestors of the Nak peoples migrated to the slopes of the Caucasus from the Fertile Crescent, where farming and raising sheep and cattle have been discovered. Nichols states that the Nak Dagestan languages are the closest thing we have to the direct continuation of cultural and linguistic continuity that gave rise to Western civilization. Joanna Nichols holds that the Drinic Zooks were descended from extremely ancient populations from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus, perhaps due to population or political pressures back in the Fertile Crescent. Others believe the so-called Eritrean version, where George Abetshtenis and Abijad Joniek still holds that those originally migrated, those original migrants contributed to both the genetic and cultural traits of the modern English and Chechens, but that the primary ancestors of the Nak-speaking migrants from what became the Eritrean, the Northeast Eritrean. And remember, the English have 89% haplogroup J2, which is the highest known frequency in the world, and J2 is associated with the Fertile Crescent. So why am I repeating all this? Let's get into the Nak and the Sumerians. And let's see why this is important. The reason why this is fascinating is because there may be a connection between the Nak people and the Sumerians. As we know, the Nak speak a non-Semitic and non-Indo-European language, i.e. Caucasian language, specifically Northeast Caucasian Dagestan language, and possibly Hurrian. Despite the obscurity of their origins, the Hurrians became one of the great and influential peoples of the Near East from the 3rd millennium BC to the 14th century BC. The original homeland was probably the South Caucasus down to the Armenian Plateau in the Zagros-Tartarus Mountains. Later they expanded to Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and Syria. The Hurrian language was neither Indo-European nor Semitic, but was akin to Northeast Caucasian. The Hurrian language was as a whole shared yet earlier common ancestor with some of the numerous comparatively obscure languages of the Caucasus is not improbable. Skipping on down, this would make it a distinct relative to such modern languages as Chechen, Avar, Lak, and Ubidi. Of the peoples existing in our time, the Chechens and the English are the closest to the Hurrian in terms of languages. So, with that being said, Sumerian, if y'all didn't know, is not a Semitic language. It's a non-Semitic language, and it's a non-Indo-European language. And many linguists do believe that Sumerians may have spoke an ancient type of a Proto-Hurrian language. Many historians have suggested that Sumer was first permanently settled between 5,500 and 4,000 BC by a West Asian people who spoke the Sumerian language, a non-Semitic and non-Indo-European argumentative language isolate, in contrast to its Semitic neighbors. This is a section from the Hurrians, the Encyclopedia of Ancient History, and it says, typologically, Hurrian is a argumentative language with argumentative grammar, unlike Indo-European and Semitic languages, but like the Sumerian language. Here's a section from archaeology. Who are the Hurrians? This is a good read. It says, but Pio Michael Skoski, an Assyrianologist at the University of Michigan, notes that Hurrian, like Sumerian, is a language unrelated to Semitic or Indo-European tongues that dominated the region during and after the 3rd millennium BC. There's another paper called Lexicon of Matches between Sumerian and Hurrian, or in Hurrian, possible historical scenarios. And it reads, the paper deals with the lexical matches between two ancient Near Eastern languages, Sumerian and Hurrian, namely several basic terms like, hand, rain, etc. Lexicon borrowing from Sumerian into Hurrian, or genetic relationships between Sumerian and Hurrian, prehistoric linguistic ship adoption by the Hurrian or closely related groups of the Sumerian language, or vice versa. Sumerian is a language spoken in southern Mesopotamia, modern Iraq. Its earliest cuneiform attestations date from the late 4th or early 3rd millennium BC, and it's functioned as a living language until the late 3rd or 2nd millennium BC. The Hurrian is in the following HU linguistic family consists of two closely related languages. Hurrian with several dialects, and Eritrean. Historical Hurrian was spoken in the southeast of present-day Turkey, in northern Syria and northern Iraq, at least from the second half of the third millennium to the end of the second millennium BC. Eritrean is attested in the first millennium BC as the language of the Eritrean Empire, present-day Armenia and neighboring areas. For the pre-literate period, it is natural to associate the Hurrian people with the Core-Araxes, early Transcaucasian. Here's another article that you should read. Sumerians had connections with the Caucasus, and it says the Hurrian-Eritrean language family consists of two closely related languages, Hurrian with several dialects, and Eritrean. Judging by historical evidence, the Hurrian language was spoken in the southeast of modern Turkey, in northern Syria, and northern Iraq, at least from the second half of the third millennium to the end of the second millennium. Hurrian and Eritrean, like Sumerian, are languages of the argumentative and ergative structure, which typologically brings them closer to Sumerian and oppose the Indo-European and Semitic languages of the Near East. The greatest Orientalist of the 20th century, Igor Dengov, and the great comparative linguist Sergei Starostny connected the Hurrian Eritrean languages with the Northeast Caucasian Dagestan languages. Hurrian is correlated with the Core-Araxes archaeological culture presented at the beginning of the 4th through 3rd millennium BC in the South Caucasus and adjacent regions of the Middle East. Some of the Sumerians withdrew and migrated to the Caucasus, where they adopted the Para-Hurro-Eritrean language, and then those of whom we know as Hurrians and Eritreans were ethnic Sumerians who switched to Hurro-Eritrean but retained in the language a few basic words of their original language. So all this fits perfectly with what we know about the Nak language people, about them going back and forth. Furthermore, Y-DNA haplogroups may confirm this connection between Sumerians and Caucasians of the Caucasus, like the Nak peoples. The Sumerians and Haplogroup J. Here's a good paper that deals with this. It's called In Search of the Genetic Footprints of Sumerians, a Survey of Y Chromosome and mtDNA Variation in the Marsh Arabs of Iraq. So it reads, the Marsh Arabs are considered the population with the strongest link to ancient Sumerians. Popular tradition, however, considers the Marsh Arabs as a foreign group of unknown origin. So there's basically two different origins for the Marsh Arabs. Either they're foreign or the descendants of Sumerians. So let's see. Evidence of genetic stratification ascribably to the Sumerian development was provided by the Y chromosome data, where the J1-page 08 branch reveals a local expansion almost contemporary with the Sumerian city-state period that characterized southern Mesopotamia. On the other hand, a more ancient background shared with northern Mesopotamia is revealed by the less represented Y chromosome lineage, J1-M267. Furthermore, a prevalent Middle Eastern ancestry of modern populations of the marshes of southern Iraq implies that if the Marsh Arabs are the descendants of the ancient Sumerians, also the Sumerians were most likely autophagous and not of Indian or Southern Asian origin. So only two groups of population arrived later in large numbers, in larger number leave historical records. Sumerians and Semitic groups. The Sumerians who spoke an isolated language, not correlated to any linguistic family, are the most ancient group living in the region, for which we have historical evidence. They occupy the delta between the two rivers in the southern parts of present-day Iraq, one of the oldest inhabited wetlands environments. The Semitic people were semi-nomadic people who spoke a Semitic language and lived in the northern area of Syro-Arabian desert, breeding small animals. From here, they reached Mesopotamia, where they settled among the pre-existing populations. The Semitic people were more numerous in the north. The Sumerians, more represented in the south, having been absorbed, the pre-existing populations melted in cultures, laying the basis of Western civilization. The ancient inhabitants of the marsh areas were Sumerians, who were the first to develop the urban civilization some 5,000 years ago. The second hypothesis posits that the advancement of Sumerian civilization was the result of human migrations from the mountainous area of northeastern Mesopotamia to the southern marshes of Iraq, with ensuing assimilation of previous populations. Details such as home agriculture, particular arch reed buildings, food gathering, raising water buffaloes, trapping birds, and spearing fish, rice cultivation, and means of transportation, slender, boomin-covered wooden boats, covered tardia, are documented as being practiced by the indigenous population locally named Menden or Marsh Arabs. This village lifestyle, which has remained unchanged for 7 millennia, suggests a possible link to the present-day Marsh inhabitants and the ancient Sumerians. So these Marsh Arabs still practice that ancient type of Sumerian culture to this day. However, popular tradition considers the Marsh Arabs as a foreign group of unknown origin. So there's still a possibility that they might be foreign, but they are having a lot of the same practices as the ancient Sumerians. But anyways, why is this important? Haplogroup J accounts for 51.1% of Iraqi samples, reaching 84.6% in the Marsh Arabs, one of the highest frequencies reported so far. Unlike the Iraqi samples, which displayed a roughly equal portion of J1-M267, 56.4%, and J2.M172, which is 43.6%, almost all Marsh Arabs' J chromosomes is at 96%, belonging to J1-M267 haplogroup, and in particular the sub-haplogroup J1-page 08. And another interesting factor about Iraq is that they also have haplogroup E. So haplogroup E, which is characterized 6.3% of Marsh Arabs and 13.6% of Iraqis, is represented by E-M123 in both groups, and E-M78 mainly in Iraqis. So that's interesting to note as well. So 2 hypotheses have been proposed for the origin of Marsh Arabs. They could be Aboriginal inhabitants of Mesopotamia correlated to Old Sumerians. Conclusion. The analysis carried out by the mtDNA in the Y chromosomes of Iraqi Marsh Arabs, a population living in the Tigris and Euphrates marshlands, have shown a prevalent audiophecus Middle Eastern component, both in males and female gene pools. A higher male than female homogeneity, mainly determined by the co-occurrence of social, cultural, and genetic factors. Whereas the frequent J1-page 08 branch reveal a local recent expansion about 4,000 years ago. Although the Y chromosome age estimates deserves caution, particularly when samples are small and standard errors large, it is interesting to note that these estimates overlap city-state period, which characterized southern Mesopotamia and is testified to by numerous ancient Sumerian cities such as Lagash, Uruk, Arud, and Larsa. In conclusion, our data show that modern Marsh Arabs of Iraq harbor mtDNAs and Y chromosomes that are predominantly of Middle Eastern origin. Moreover, a Middle Eastern ancestral origin for the modern population of the marshes in southern Iraq implies that if the Marsh Arabs are the descendants of the ancient Sumerians. Also, Sumerians are not of Indian or Southern Asian ancestry. So why is this all important? If the Marsh Arabs are indeed descended from Sumerians, then this could prove that Sumerians had haplogroup J. Furthermore, if Sumerians had haplogroup J, this could validate the story of the Nak people coming from the Caucasus, coming from the Fertile Crescent into the Caucasus or vice versa. However, there is even a bigger picture if all of this is true. The Dagestan have 44 through 99% of haplogroup J1. The Nak have 51 through 79% of haplogroup J2, and the Marsh Arabs have 96% haplogroup J1. Why is this significant? And remember, just showing you the paper, that they have high amounts of haplogroup J, and the Marsh Arabs, as I just read, have 96%. So why is this important? All of these high amounts of haplogroup J are among populations that are non-Semitic speakers in origin. To this day, the Nak Dagestan people don't speak Semitic languages and basically have 100% of haplogroup J. Furthermore, if Marsh Arabs do descend from Sumerians, we know for a fact that Sumerians did not speak a Semitic language. Also, we know that there is likely a common origin between the Sumerians and Proto-Caucasians, so everything is lining up. With all that being said, it's very much probability that haplogroup J in origin were people who spoke a non-Semitic language and were Proto-Caucasian speakers. And although the Marsh Arabs today speak a Semitic language, which is Arabic, they are a perfect example of a people who adopted a Semitic language, even though originally they spoke a non-Semitic language, i.e. Sumerian or Proto-Caucasian. So keep that in mind. Although these Marsh Arabs today speak Arabic, if their ancestors spoke Sumerian, this shows that people did adopt Semitic languages, even though they spoke originally a different language. Anyways, Armenoid Sumerians. If you look at the sculptures and the statues of Sumerians, in my opinion, they look like Caucasians, i.e. they're white-skinned, they have black hair, they have dark or light eyes. Basically Sumerians have an Armenoid phenotype. So here's like a Sumerian statue, and here's a Chechen man. And here is a Sumerian tablet and a Armenian man. And look at that nose. Look at that nose. Look at that head. Here is another Sumerian statue, and this is, I think this is an English man. This is an English man. I remember getting these specific images. Look at his nose. Look at his head. Look at that nose, that head. Here is a Sumerian tablet and a Kurdish man. This is a Kurdish person. Look at his nose. Look at his eyes. Look at his head. Here is the war relief of Sumerians of southern Mesopotamia. And here is a picture of a Kurd in Armenian. Here is just a regular, Armenian girl. Or yeah, she's Armenian, Armenian girl. Look at their, noses. Look at their head. He's on fire. Is a, hooked nose type. Here is some Sumerian head figurines. They even classify them as Armenoid. And here is Kurdish men. Look at the noses and the head structure and stuff of that nature. And remember, what is an Armenoid? Short-headed and high skull type with fleshy features, a flat occiput, and a hooked nose, often dark-haired, light brown skin, common in mountain regions of Asia Minor, especially in Armenia and Anatolia, was found in ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, Hittites, and Cretans around 4000 BCE. So kind of what we're dealing with. And this, ironically, is the phenotype most people associate with Semites. Anyways, the Nakat biblical origins. We're almost done. What are the biblical origins of the of the Chechens and the English? Caucasus, or Kavakos, was the supposed ancestors of Chechens and English, according to Georgian chroniclers. Parents Torgorma, grandparents Japheth. Caucasus or Kavakos was the proposed ancestors of Chechens and English, according to Georgian chroniclers. The legend has it that he was the son of Targomos, and thus the brother of Heos, Mavkos, Loskos, referred to as the ancestors of the Lesgaric peoples, Horos, Kartolos, known as the ancestors of the Georgian peoples, and Argos took their origins. Caucasus' son, Durzuk, is said to be the ancestors of the Chechens and the English. According to Leontovi Muscorovi, the 11th century Georgian chronicler, the word Caucasian is derived from the Nak people's ancestor Kavakos. And so here's sort of like their genealogy. They come from Noah to Japheth, from Japheth to Gomer, from Gomer to Togorma, and then Togorma in their tradition had a son named Caucasus. He's on fire! English descend from Caucasus. So the Durnzuks, also known as the Durnzuks, was a Georgian name from the Georgian chronicles used to describe the people of North Caucasus, identified as the Venaks. I'll let Yeshua read this one while I get a quick drink of water.
The Dertzuk was mentioned by the chronicles as the most distinguished among the descendants of the Kavkas, who led his people, the Dersuts, into the mountains, where they would become the ancestors of today's Vanak people. Before his death, Targamos divided the country between his sons, with Caucasus, the eldest and most noble, receiving the central Caucasus. Caucasus engendered the Chechen tribe and his descendant Derdzuk, who took residence in a mountainous region later called Derzukia. After him, established a strong state in the 4th and 3rd centuries BC. The name Derdzuk traces back to the ancient city north of Lake Urmia, not far from Nashik 7. Derzuks and Nachimatians were remnants of the Urartians. Derzuks were also known as the Hurrian.
All right. According to Letovi Muscorovi, the 11th century Georgian chronicler, the word Caucasian is derived from the Nak ancestor Kalvaskos. According to the Georgian Anbechins of Inland State University, the Vanaks are the ancient natives of the Caucasus. It is noteworthy that according to the genealogy table drawn by Lentovi Muscorovi, the ancestor folklore of the Vanaks is Kavakos, hence the name Kavaskians. One of the ethnicons met in the ancient Georgian written sources signifying the ancestors of the Chechens and the English. As appears from the above, the Vanaks, at least by name, are presented as the most Caucasian people of all Caucasian peoples. Caucasus, Vascasians, in the Georgian historical tradition. American linguist Joanna Nichols has used language to connect the modern people of the Caucasus region to the ancient farmers of the Fertile Crescent, kind of like the Sumerians. Anyways, her research suggests that farmers of the region were Proto-Nak Destinians. Nichols stated the Nak Dingestanian language are the closest thing we have to the direct continuation of the cultural and linguistic continuity that gave rise to Western civilization, kind of like the Sumerians. But anyways, I think I already read this. Or I think you already read this part. Yeah, let me just go over it. The ancestors of the modern Chechens and the English were known as the Dindzuks before the death of Togorma. Togarma divided the country amongst his sons, with Kavaskus, the eldest and most noble, receiving the Central Caucasus. Kavaskus generated the Chechen tribes and his descendants, Derzusk, who took residence in the mountain regions, later called Derzuskenatia. After him, established a strong state in the 4th and 3rd centuries BC. And here's a book that actually goes into that. It says, The Georgian Chronicles of Metlovi, which refers to events that goes as far back as pre-Christian era, so it's even pre-Christian era, included the first written records of the Kadasnians, progenitors of the Nochui. According to Mestrovi, the Nakatmetuvians were descendants of Torgormos, the mythical ancestor of the Caucasian peoples, who moved together with the sons of Caucasus from Assyria. So they come from the Fertile Crescent. Before his death, Torgormos divided the country amongst his sons, and Kavoskos, the eldest and most noble, receiving the Central Caucasus. So going on to the next one. So the Japhetic theory of the Soviet linguist N.Y. Mari proposed that all native language families in the Caucasus, including Northwest, Northeast, and South Caucasian, belonged to the same Japhetic language group, which in linguistic implied common ancestry, which I agree. I believe that Caucasian language would be under the Japheth, family of languages. And so I'm reading what's in yellow. It says, going back, I'm reading what's in blue. J. Nichols proposed that the Nak-Dangestani language is long indigenous to the Caucasus, suggesting a fairly similar archaeological continuity for the last 8,000 years or more in central Dagestan. It is also reinforced by the distribution of loanwords from ancient Mesopotamia into early Nak-Dangestani. And I'm reading this because I'm kind of reminding y'all that this language family is really connected to ancient Mesopotamia as well. And here's another book that goes into the biblical, I guess you could say, connections of the Caucasians' ancestors who they say they descend from. It says, it is interesting to note an opinion of the Caucasian unity based on the continuity of origin came into existence in the Caucasus long ago. Leonti Mervoni, a prominent Georgian author of the 11th century, begins his work on the history of ancient Georgia with the mythical tribes, with the mythical times of the Caucasus, and gives a genealogical tree of the Caucasus peoples, representing the Armenians, Georgians, Banaks, Dangestani tribes, and others as the descendants of legendary Torgos or Torgorma, their common ancestor. According to Mitrovi, the descendants of Torgorma, inhabiting all of the Caucasus, lived in friendship and came together against the outer enemies to defend their native land. And here's yet another source. The Vanaks, it is already known to the reader, are an ancient natives of the Caucasus. It is noteworthy that according to the genealogical table drawn up by Leonti Mitrovi, the legendary forefather of the Vanaks was Kavaskus, hence the name Kavaskians, one of the ethnicons met in the ancient Georgian written sources, signifying the ancestor of the Chechens and the English. As appears from above, the Vanaks, at least by name, are presented as the most Caucasian people of all Caucasian peoples, Vakaskians in the Georgian historical tradition. According to the version of Litovi Morovi, Kavskus and his brother Lek migrated from Transcaucasus to the inner to the uninhabited northern Caucasus and occupied the territory from the mountains to the mouth of the Volga. According to archaeological data, in the Bronze Age, the ancient Caucasian tribes inhabited not only the mountains of the northern Caucasus, but also lowlands as far into the steppe. So the Nakat, or the Nak, and Torgorma. The Chechens and the English, according to their accounts, descend from Torgorma. Now, this is interesting because other Caucasian groups claim descent from Togarma as well. The Armenians say that they descend from Hayek, the son of Togarma. Hayek, I've been over this in the past, Hayek, the legendary patriarch and the founder of Armenian nation, his story is told in the history of Armenia, attributed to the Armenian historian Moses Caron. According to the New Christianized Version, the legend of Hayek, Nefet, Hayek, the forefather, is considered to be the son of Togarma, Nefet, who was one of the descendants of Japheth in the medieval written sources, and the name given to Armenia, Togarma, House of Togarma, and to the Armenians. And you can read the Institute of Armenian Studies of Yenvren State University that goes into this as well. I'll read some of this because I read this in the past, but basically it says, according to the ancient legend, the Armenians who originated from an epic forefather, Hayek Nefet, who was one of the sons of the gods. According to Movis Kontozi, the first of the gods were dreadful and outstanding, and they were the reason the world's blessings. They were the reasons of the beginning of the world and population. From these gods, the giants were originated. One of them was Japhethian Hayek. According to the New Christianized Version of the legend, Hayek Nefet is considered to be the son of Togarma Nefet, who was one of the descendants of Japheth. In the written sources, the name given to Armenia, the house of Togarma, and to the Armenians. So, what's interesting about the story of Hayek is that it does bear striking resemblance to the account of the Chechen and the English once living in Mesopotamia and then having to leave and going to the Caucasus, including a branch of Sumerians staying in the region. Just to recap, if you forgot, the story of Hayek is about the ancestors of Armenians who fought against the Semites and led his people from Mesopotamia to the Caucasus to found the kingdom of Armenia, or Urartu. And just to recap that, according to the accounts of Moses Caron and Sextus Julius Africanus, the battle occurred between the dynasty of Hayek and the Chaldean dynasty in its third generation that had control of Babylon and the remaining territory of Akkad under King Bulus, the symbolic Babylonian Akkadian god of war, or founder of Babylon, depending on mythological tradition. The conflict is said to have happened in 2492 BCE or 2107 BCE. In Moses of Caron's account, Hayek, son of Togarma, had a child named Armenek while he was living in Babylon. After the arrogant titan Bel made himself king over all, Hayek immigrated to the region near Mount Ararat. Hayek relocated near Mount Ararat with an extended household of at least 300 and settled there, founding the village of Hayestan. Bel decided to march against him with a massive force, but Hayek was warned ahead of time by Cledmos of his pending approach. He assembled his own army along the shores of Lake Van and told them that they must defeat and kill Bel or die trying to do so rather than become his slaves. Hayek and his people, from the time of their forefathers, Noah and Japheth, had migrated south towards the warmer lands near Babylon. Now, this is sound very similar to the Chechen and English accounts when it comes to their language and agriculture, them going back and forth from the Caucasus to the Fertile Crescent. So let me reread that again. And this is connecting that to the Armenian legend. So Hayek and his people from the time of their forefathers, Noah and Japheth, had migrated south toward the warmer lands near Babylon. But proud Hayek refused to submit to Baal. As soon as his son Amalek was born, Hayek rose up and led his people northward into the land of Iraq. And so, this is just very interesting, showing that this back and forth migration from these descendants of Japheth to the Caucasus, to the Fertile Crescent, and then back again. And so I'm going to just kind of skip over that. I'm just going to read this part, though. This is the story of Hayek and Bel, and places the origins of the Armenian people as the descendants of biblical Noah via son Japheth. Hayek, a descendant of Japheth and noted archer, hence the later association with Orion, rebelled one day against Bel, the evil and repressive Babylonian tyrant, and returned back to his homeland around Mount Ararat in ancient Armenia. Bel followed Hayek and his relations to so that a mighty battle followed in which Bel was killed. Hayek then gave his name to his descendants, the Hay people, and the name of the region of Armenia in the Armenian language is Hayastan. And so, interestingly enough, this story may be true, as science has discovered parallels between the story of Hayek and the founding of Armenia and the genetics of Armenians. We went over this in the past. Moses Chronosti, a historian of the 5th century, wrote that his native Armenia had been established in 2492 BC. But either he made a lucky guess or he had gained access to useful data, because new genetic analysis suggests that his date was entirely plausible. And so I'm not going to read the rest of it, but his date was correct about the formation of Armenia. And this genetic paper goes into it as well. I'm not going to read it. With that being said, I do believe that the Chechen and the English and the Armenians are the descendants of Togarmah, all these Caucasian peoples. After all, according to the biblical history, what land and people are supposed to come from Togarmah? As we went over before, Togarmah is the descendants of Japheth and is thought to represent some of the people located in Anatolia. Togarmah in Jewish traditions linked to the Turkic peoples. Georgian traditions claim that Togarmah is the ancestor of Georgians. And however, modern historians record that Georgians are descendants of Tubal, but still that's another descendant of Japheth. When talking about Togarmah, some sources believe that not only Turks, but also Armenian people descend from Togarmah. And most Bible maps you look at in dealing with Togarmah place him in the Southern Caucasus. And various historians, I'm not going to read all this, but because we went over this in the past, but various historians do link Togarmah to the Caucasus. It says several later ethnological traditions have claimed Togarmah as the mythical ancestors of various peoples located in Western Asia and the Caucasus. And so here's just sort of a map again showing that many do place them in this region. And again, when it comes to Armenian and Georgian tradition, together Togarmah is one being the son of both Tyrus and Gomer, is mentioned by Armenian Moses of Karon and Georgian Letovi Mistrovi, who regarded Togarmah as the founder of their nations, along with the other Caucasian peoples. According to Moses of Karon, history of Armenia, and to Letovi Mistrovi, medieval Georgian chronicles, Togarmah, or in their word, Togarmos, was thought to have lived in Babylon before he received the land between the two seas and two mountains, i.e. the Caucasus, in his possession. He settled near Mount Ararat and divided his land amongst his sons. And according to the Armenian and Georgian traditions, he had about 8 sons. One of them is Hayek, who was the first son of Togarma, who was the founder of the Armenian nation. And then you have Kartos, who settled northeast of Mount Ararat. And he had Ketorovi, who settled, who was the founder of the Georgian nation. Then you have some other groups who represent other Caucasian populations. And then you have Koskas, who will be the ancestor of the Chechens and the English, because we talked about Koskas. And of course, various Bible dictionaries put Togarma in ancient Armenia. Togarma was probably the ancient name of Armenia. It was celebrated for its horses and mules and the men of Togarma, like the modern Armenians, probably an Armenian. The ancient identification of their country with Togarma by the Armenians, though correct, is probably due to the Septuagint transposition of G and R, which has caused them to see therein the names of Togarma, father of Hayek, the founder of their race. Here's another map putting Togarma in the Southern Caucasus. Jewish writers of the past usually wrote of the Turks as Togarma and the Armenians as the house of Togarma. It is not difficult, therefore, to identify Togarma as Armenia or Turkey, and to me both, the people of which asserted the descendancy of Togarma or the Togarma scriptures. Again, here's Togarma in between Anatolia and the Caucasus. Many contributors connect Togarma with the Armenians. The Armenians themselves traditionally claim to be the descendants of Hayek, the son of Togarma. Ancient Greek writers speak of the Armenians as famed for their horses and mules. So, the descendants of Togarma. Hayek will be the forefather of the Armenians. Caucasus will be the ancestor of the Chechens and the English. I fundamentally believe that Caucasians, Anatolians, and Iranians, specifically with Haplogroup J, are the descendants of Togarma. Linguistically, they would have spoken a Proto-Caucasian language in ancient times. Everything lines up perfectly with the biblical and genetic and linguistic model. Togarma is the figure of the table of nations in Genesis 10, the list of descendants of Noah that represent the peoples located in the peoples known to the ancient Hebrews. Togarma is among the descendants of Japheth and is thought to represent the peoples located in Anatolia. Parents is Gomer, children, Hayek, Koskas, and Kartos. Koskas being the Chechens and the English, Hayek being Armenians, and these would be the grandchildren. And the sibling is Ashkenaz, who we talked about last week, actually. And remember, this is part of their tradition, as I read a few moments ago. And Koskas is the ancestors of the English and the Chechens, who descends from Togarma, the son of Japheth. And again, Hayek, the founder of Armenians. So now it's time for the questions and answer part of the video. Ask whatever questions you want pertaining to the presentation, and let's begin. Hopefully y'all kind of understood all that. But we are done. Yeshub, are you there? Hold on, let me see. Hold on, you guys. If anybody can contact Yeshub and tell him that I'm done, reach the end of the presentation. Unless he's speaking and I don't hear him. I don't know what's going on. I don't see him on on Clubhouse or anything. Am I in the Matrix? By the way, can I have a 1 in the chat if I'm in the Matrix at all? I want to make sure that I'm not the one that's lagging. So y'all can hear me? Okay.
I can't hear you. I can hear you. My bad. I had to step away for a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I reached to the Q&A section. Did you want me to go back at all, or are you good?
I'm gonna put the link in the chat. There was a question that came up while you were disseminating information.
Oh, there was? Okay. You can ignore my calls and texts then, because I called you and texted me.
Oh, my bad, bro. I had to walk away for a minute.
That's all right. That's all right. It wasn't too long. It was maybe about like a minute.
True Judah, here it is.
So how would this fit the biblical narrative? Sumerians' first civilization is Kish. After the flood, similar to Cush, then Nimrod, a Hamite, Cushite conquered the region. All right, so there's a few statements to address in this question. Kish is not a Sumerian civilization. Kish is a Eastern Semitic civilization founded by the Akkadians. Remember, the Akkadians conquered the Sumerians. There are different ways you can sort of interpret and look at the timeline of the biblical narrative in the biblical world. From my understanding, Sumerians would be a Proto-Caucasian people, descendants of Togarma. So I believe that the events of all that happened pre-Sumerian, perhaps, maybe in the Proto-historic era. But, you know, there's definitely some parsing out that we can do when it comes to what happened. But when it comes to Nimrod and all them, I believe that as soon as Nimrod Empire fell, he quickly fled into Africa because all these peoples would have wanted to kill him. Normally, when an empire falls, the first people that you go after is the nobility. And so when Nimrod's empire fell, I believe he just fled straight into Africa.
All right, what about this? I know who this is, boy. This is a known racist right here.
A known racist?
Yeah.
All right, so J1 are Arabs, come from their father Abraham, paternal lineage. All right, so my question to you is, do we have the body of Abraham? And if so, is Abraham's body J1? But second of all, we do have bodies of Caucasus hunter-gatherers with J1. And I don't believe Abraham was a Caucasus hunter-gatherer. As I said before, when it comes to Haplogroup J, the highest concentration of Haplogroup J is among non-Semitic speakers of the Chechen and English ethnic groups. If you want to say Abraham was a non-Semitic person, then that's pretty much going against scripture, since we know Abraham is Semitic. Again, Haplogroup J originated with Caucasus hunter-gatherers. The highest portions of Haplogroup J is found among ancient non-Semitic populations, such as the Sumerians, the Hurrians, the Uratrians, and the highest forms of Haplogroup J is still found today in the Caucasus among the English and the Chechens, who to this day speak Caucasian languages and not Semitic languages. J is only seen in, only one branch of J is seen in Semitic people, which is J-P58. It's only one branch, whereas the other branches of J are either among Caucasian populations or Indo-European populations. So I will have to disagree that J1 would be Abraham. And yes, you do have Arab speaking peoples with J1. Keyword on Arab speaking. But you also have Arab peoples with haplogroup E. And I propose E as being the original haplogroup of Semitic people, Proto-Semitic people. And it's not just me saying this, but various linguists and geneticists say this as well. But that's what I have to say to that.
He's on fire!
All right, he made a statement. I said, "This is EMAC. I know this dude very well. A very colorist, racist type of person."
What is he like? Is he a Christian or is he a Jew or is he a Native American only?
He's a professed Hebrew, self-professed, proclaimed Hebrew with haplogroup R.
Haplogroup R. Why are you caping for J if you're R, dude?
He's
You should be trying to prove R, not J.
Well, he's on this white people are superior, thing.
Oh, he's like a Nazi then.
In thinking, the way he thinks.
Why are you a Nazi when they tried to kill the Jewish people? Are you mad, man? Are you insane?
He says here, I guess he's referring to the people that you brought up.
The come from Fertile Crescent to Caucasus, dagger, cut yourself.
Come on.
All right, so a lot of people come from the Fertile Crescent, first of all, but coming from the Fertile Crescent doesn't automatically make you Semite. You had other people in the Fertile Crescent, just as I read earlier about when it comes to the legend of these people. Japheth also comes from Fertile Crescent. So does Ham. But let's deal with Japheth. Togarma specifically has a legend of coming from the area of the Fertile Crescent, like the Armenians. This is why it's good to understand other people's cultures of the ancient Near East. And I've been pressing this. The Armenians have a tradition that Japheth and Noah came from the Fertile Crescent to the Caucasus. Let me read this for you. It says, let me make this bigger. It says, this is the story of Hayek and Bel, and places the origins of the Armenian people as the descendants of the biblical Noah via the son of Japheth. Hayek was a descendant of Japheth and noted archer, hence his association with Orion. By the way, Orion is an Indo-European god. Rebelled one day against Bel, the evil and a progressive and repressive Babylonian tyrant, and returned back to his homeland around Mount Ararat in ancient Armenia. So this story of the Armenians basically say that they were once in the Fertile Crescent and migrated to Armenia due to the Semitic population basically treating them bad. So you had different ethnic groups in the Fertile Crescent. It wasn't just Semites. If you're saying that it's just Semites, you had descendants of Japheth there too.
He's on fire!
Yeah, I mean, this guy. No, I think Rashun.
Who
Getting
did,
a little confused here.
okay, so who do you say are who did you say or did you say? Okay, who did you say or did you say who are the founder of Armenia? And are you familiar with the descendants of Lud and Ashur being the origin of the land? All right, so the founder of Armenia, according to the Armenians, and even according to DNA, would be Hayek. For one, if you look up right now, the Armenian language, the Armenians speak a Indo-European language, and there are some Caucasian variants within their language as well. I know what you're probably going to allude to, Armenians probably being some from Shem, but linguistically, they're not Semitic, and ethnically, they're really not Semitic either. Armenians are Indo-European Caucasian people. And this is why language is important. Now, when it comes to the descendants of Lud, there is no confirmation as to who Lud is. The Hebrews only mentioned Lud like only twice, maybe 3 times in scripture, but we really don't know who Lud is. And when it comes to Ashur, as I showed before in this presentation, Ashur was basically completely surrounded by Indo-European and Caucasian populations. Here, let me make this screen bigger. Here in yellow is Ashur, and here in the dark brown is the Hurrians. In the center of Ashur is the Mitanni, who are again a Hurrian people and a Indo-Aryan people or Indo-Iranian people. And basically the Semitic Assyrians were pretty much surrounded by these Caucasian groups, which is why today some of the highest haplogroups you find among Assyrians are haplogroup R, because Assyrians have R, which is Indo-European, and they have haplogroup J, which is honestly Caucasian. But there is Assyrians with haplogroup E, and we can't forget about that. There are such things as Assyrian people with haplogroup E. And my position, of course, is that E is the original Proto-Semitic haplogroup.
All right. I think you got another question here.
All right. So I wonder, are you saying that we know who Japheth is testing by sperm or chromosomes? Being serious? I'm saying that we can know who Japheth is by looking at people's oral tradition, oral testimony, oral, mythology. The same way how we discovered that we're Hebrews. We use oral tradition and things of that nature. I think we have to respect other people's traditions and look at theirs as well. Who do these people say that they descend from? Chechens and English claim descent from Togarmah. Armenians claim descent from Togarmah. So what we do at that point is look at the language of these people. They speak Indo-European and Caucasian languages. These are non-Semitic languages. Then we look into the genetics. We see that these people have high concentrations of haplogroup J. From there, we can use critical thinking and just basically say, all right, so if these people are saying that they descend from Togarmah, they all have a similar genetic component, which is haplogroup J, then we can probably parse out and say J would be the branch of Togarmah, and Togarmah, of course, descends from Japheth. And so that's how we can do it. You have to do it one step at a time. Let's look at the tradition. Let's look at who they say they come from. Then let's look at their language. Then let's look at their genetics. Sort of work our way backwards instead of starting with Japheth and working our way down. Let's actually work our way backwards. I think that's the best method, depending on which method you want to use. We did work our way forwards in previous presentations because we started with Caucasus hunter-gatherers and work our way down. This time I'm sort of working my way backwards with this last series. But that's the answer to that question. Yes, we can. All right, so what time period are you referring to? For which specific part of the presentation? Because we did talk about multiple time periods. Like when I talked about the Caucasus hunter-gatherers, they're around the time of the Upper Paleolithic. But then when I talked about the Sumerians, they were in 4000 BC. I talked about the Hurrians, they were in the 3rd millennium BC. So I did talk about various different time periods. But basically, I mainly talked about the Neolithic and the early Bronze Age, and a little bit of the Iron Age. Those are the main time periods I talked about tonight.
Yeah, I think he's referring to the Assyrians. That may be what he's referring to, because the last question he brought up the Assyrians and Lud.
Oh, well, the Assyrians, I think, go back to the early Bronze Age. That's when the first Proto-Semites were migrating from the Levant. So that would sort of be their genesis. Then again, they could have popped up really mainly around the Middle Bronze Age as very small tribes of people.
Yeah, that would have consisted haplogroup E, like Proto-Ubaid and stuff like that.
Right. The expansion of the Natufians from the Negev all the way up into Syria, and then going a little bit eastward into Mesopotamia, which would be your Akkadians and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, he clarified.
A time period for the founders of Armenia. So, yeah, this is actually a very interesting thing about the Armenians. So they say, according to their oral history, that their empire, or that their nation, should I say, began in 2492 BC, going off the top of my head. And this actually is confirmed using DNA as well. Let me try to find that for you, and then you can do your own studying on that. But I think it's very important to understand and learn these people of the Near East. These will be our neighbors. You can read the New York Times date of Armenia's birthplace, given the 5th century gains credency. You can read that paper. It goes into the formation of Armenia, and that their tradition is correct, that they did begin this time period. Here is a genetic paper that goes into it. It's called the Genetic Evidence for the Origin of the Armenians from the Bronze Age Mixing of Multiple Populations. It says, we note that these mixtures dates almost coincidence with the legendary establishment of Armenia in 2492 BCE. This is around the time of the Bronze Age. So that's when they began. That's when their nation began. It begins with Hayek leaving Mesopotamia and going into the Caucasus, become the father of Armenians.
Yep. I mean, I think it's amazing because we can see where these people go back to, where they trace back to, and what you just brought up about the implications of the oral story. Their relations to the Hurrians, and that would also relate these people to many of the Jewish populations because they have. Oh man, most of these people would relate to the Jewish populations that have the haplogroup J marker. So you guys are seeing their ancestry elucidated right before your eyes. These people, relate to the Hurrians, the people are Arachu. That's what these people relate to, and they came in these different localities and began to settle and create civilizations and societies. That's what the brother's showing you.
Yeah, the Hurrians are extremely important people to study when it comes to the ancient Near East. Us as Hebrews or whatever, we got to study other people other than Israel when it comes to the ancient Near East. We got to study the other ethnic groups that resided in that region, like the Hurrians. They are so important to our understanding of the ancient Near East, especially later when I deal with more genetic papers. When I come back to Yeshub's channel, we're going to come back to the Hurrians, and we're going to go deep into who their descendants are and who the Hurrians are, because they are a very influential people. We're only scratching the surface, believe it or not, because we actually go a lot deeper.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find something else in the comment section. Nikki Lane.
Can you cover the Colchians? Well, I kind of already have my presentations panned out. The next one for like tomorrow at the same time, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, because I think James Cassell has a show, but I'm going to try to hopefully do a show tomorrow. But I already have everything panned out, all my presentations made. So I'm sorry, I won't be touching on the Colchians. Maybe in the future, if you remind me, I can do that. But I will not be touching on the Colchians, unfortunately. But I do know about that ethnic group. I do know about them.
Yep. Let's see. Let's go back to our racist friend.
Okay. Hurrians are the original Armenian from BC era. What's the problem here? All right, so if you look into different papers dealing with the Hurrians aren't necessarily the sole ancestors of the Armenians. The Armenians are an amalgam of Hurrians and Uratrians, because keep in mind, Hurrian is a Caucasian language, and Armenians today speak a independent branch of the Indo-European language. So Armenians are really a mix of Caucasians and Indo-Europeans. They're not purely Hurrian. They're a slight crossbreed between Hurrians and Indo-European populations. But yes, I would say that Armenians will be one of those modern-day ethnic branches of the Hurrians, and there are actually many people in the Near East that descend from the Hurrians. Like I said, they're very influential. You'll be surprised who descends from the Hurrians, actually. You should actually mention it. I'm not going to say it again. Hopefully people forgot.
Yep. These Japhetic people, man.
Yep, non-Semitic.
Let's see.
Maybe you can sort of break down what you thought of the presentation while we wait for more questions. What do you think of it? What was interesting or whatever?
I believe that this entire dialogue and discussion and demonstration is pretty much damning to anybody that's that's a proponent of J being a Shemitic marker, or the marker of Abraham, or the marker of the Israelites. It's pretty much damning at this point, because then you would have to reconfigure everything and make the origin story come from Georgia and from these Caucasian or Caucasus peoples, which it just doesn't fit. It's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I think you did a very great job at elucidating this information. And like I said, it's always big on interdisciplinary studies. You're bringing forth the linguistic component. You're bringing forth the genetic component. You're bringing forth the demography component, the anthropological component, and the archaeological component. You're bringing all these components together and harmonizing them to create a narrative to see who these people would be. And if we're overlaying this with the biblical narrative as it relates to human history, then you would have to say that these people would have to fall into the original cluster of the Japhites. So it's just that simple. You pretty much brought the information pointing that out, what haplogroup these people would represent today. And not only did you use modern population density to show, I think you showed the Armenians today are like majority, what was it, like 80% haplogroup J or something like that. It was a high percentage.
Yeah, these Caucasian populations have up to 98.5% when it comes to J1, and then for J2 they have up to 87%.
Right. So I mean, and then when we start looking at you start off with the ancient DNA. The ancient DNA reflects that, because we see J there in the ancient populations through the bodies and skeletal remains. We exhume and sequence the genomes. There it is there. So we do find J in this area, right above Georgia. And we can clearly see that these people sprung from this area and produced what we would call the Hurrians, the Urachu people. And he did a great job, given the history behind these people groups and their spread. Because you also mentioned the demography of these people and how they spread to different localities or whatnot. And he brought up the amalgamation thing. So I think he did a great job at showing that. But like I said, anyone claiming that J is Shemitic, I mean, you're pretty much doomed when we start looking at the academic literature. Because the academic literature is not pointing towards a Shemitic origin, an Abrahamic origin. Is really pointing towards a Japhetic origin. And as you can see on the screen, you can see the map. These people come from around the Caspian Sea. They come from Georgia. They don't come, from the Levantine populations. They don't come from those people. I mean, this is illustrated here, perfectly. So when we see the oldest J marker being found in Georgia, it's not by coincidence. And then you see the other two is north of Georgia. This is where these people's stomping grounds were in times past. So we would expect the Shemites, their stomping grounds, to be more close to the Levant, and those areas, associated with Shem, not this far up north. I think you showed a biblical map. Can you pull that biblical map back up with Togarmah and the Japhites and the Shemites lands plotted out? And I want y'all to keep in mind the map that he has right here of the Saserbia man, and see how we plot out these biblical nations. You see where Togarmah is? Togarmah is up here. This is all considered Japhetic. And then right below it, we see Shem. The DNA samples we find in Shem's land are consistent with E markers, especially earlier times where the Syrian desert is below this. But as you go north, above the Euphrates, you see Togarmah, which he brought out today. Then you see Gomer going towards, I believe that's Russia. Remember, there's the Caspian Sea to the top right. This is where we found those old bones, those old haplogroup J markers were found up here, the oldest ones. Sapserbian cave is up here. What does that say right there? Armenia Mountains? Is that what that says there? I can't really.
Yeah, Armenia Mountains, Kurdish Mountains, and the Caucasus Mountains.
Yeah. So we find we find the antecedents towards that locality up there. We don't find it down towards Shem's territory. But we do find haplogroup E towards Shem's territory.
Oh, right here, where E would be.
Exactly. And then you see Madai, where Zagros, we brought up the Zagros Mountains.
Yep.
These people would definitely came from what we would consider Japhetic territories and locales. And then you see Kittim, you see Javan, you see Magog all to the left. And, in prior episodes, we brought out DNA of the early Greeks, who Javan would be. And these people also would have had J markers as well. So it's just like, it's going in full circle. It's cyclical at this point. And proving these points, man, and seeing who these people were. I mean, he even gave you more facial morphology, where the nose, there you go, the armanoids. This is what these people would have looked like during that time period, man. So
it's funny, we associate this with Semitic, even though these are literally non-Semitic people.
Yep. These are these Hurrians. They were not Afro-Asiatic at all. And I mean, it's pretty much, a body bag at this point, brother. So, actually EMAC, he looks like these people, but he's haplogroup R, but he has a similar phenotype, as these people on the screen.
Yeah, it makes sense because we know that Caucasus hunter-gatherers did mix with the Eastern Eurasian hunter-gatherers to create the Yamnaya. And the Yamnaya are the ancestors of Proto-Indo-Europeans, and J would have traveled with R. So some R people can resemble J people because they're really all the same people. They're all Japhetic. This is a Japheth phenotype. This phenotype we keep calling Semitic is really a Japhetic Near Eastern branch of the Indo-European phenotype.
Right.
Not Semitic at all.
And Semitic, referring to your older videos, would be more Ethiopic or I'm trying to think of the other word.
Be more Natufian.
Yeah.
Or Ethiopic. Even Ngozi says the original Semites, Proto-Semites, would have been a little bit more East African looking.
Yeah, these people look like
they look like
Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, you know what I'm saying? Those type of people groups, and these will not be representatives of the ancient Hebrews. Not at all.
No. Literally the opposite. This right here is a Kurdish man, as an example. Kurdish people today speak an Indo-European language. Armenians speak an Indo-European language. Yeah,
so I mean, it's the explanatory power of your model has to be pertinent, has to be able to explain, certain circumstances. And saying that these people are the progenitors of Shem, are the progenitors of Abraham, there's a lot of stuff that you have to reconcile. You have to reconcile, when did they make the language switch? Why did they make the language switch? Why are they not always accustomed to Afro-Asiatic languages if they came from that branch of people? If you're saying that they are, these Iratians and Hurrians, if you're saying that Abraham comes from them, then he would have to absorb another people group's dialect and another people's culture, because he would not have had that culture or that dialect. He would have had whatever culture the Japhites would have had in that region, or the Iratians or Hurrians. He would have had a Hurrian culture, not a Shemitic one. I'm pretty sure they didn't have a Yahweh or Yahwistic culture in Georgia. So
nope, not at all. They were very much pagan. And what's interesting about the Georgians and all that type of, well, should I say Caucasian, these Caucasian populations, is that, when you look at, try not to spoil, when you look at Caucasian populations, when you look at certain practices, like, I'm not going to say it. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, you can save it for another episode, man. You don't have to spill the beans.
But are there any other questions?
Right here.
What about the Nubian nation? Are they Haplogroup J? So about Nubians, are you talking about Nubians, or are you talking about the Nubians of North Africa, the Amazigh, the Amazigh group? Can you clarify, please? Because I can't tell if you said Nubian or Nubian. But... So any more questions while he fixes that statement? Japheth is Y-DNA-R. Yes, I do believe Japheth would have had Y-DNA-R as well as J, L, G. A lot of these different haplogroups, because after all, Japheth did have a lot of children. If you read Genesis 10, he had a lot of children. So definitely some R, definitely J, definitely G, stuff like that.
Hey, man, Rashun is referring to the Nawapians in America, a black conscious group.
I think. Wait, what'd you say, you should?
Yeah, this is referring to a black conscious group that arose in America that called themselves Nawapians.
No. So what does want me to answer then?
He's saying if they Haplogroup J or not.
I mean, shoot, I have to test every single Nubian member to know that. And frankly, I'd rather test an ancient Israelite sample. If I had the money, time, and resources to test some people, it ain't gonna be Nubians. It's gonna be Iron Age Israelite samples. I'm not gonna waste money, because it's a lot of money when you test these samples. And it takes a couple of years for them to come through. Now, I know you're talking about, live subjects. Live subjects, of course, you can get a sample, within a couple of weeks or months, like we do a 23andMe test. But when you test these ancient remains, like Ramses III or Canaanite remains, or, Caucasus hunter-gatherer remains, I hear that it does take a while for them to parse out these samples. Like, it takes a couple of years. Which is kind of tedious. I think it takes like up to 2 years to get the sample, but yeah.
Brace yourself for this one.
All right. No, Y-DNA J2 is Esau. All right, that's interesting. So why do you believe J2 specifically is Esau? I'm not even going to argue that. I don't think that's true, but I am curious to see why you think J2 specifically is Esau. And are you saying the entire branch of J2 or a specific branch of J2? By the way, a lot of, as I said before, English and Chechen Caucasian populations have J2 And these people are not Semitic, whereas Esau, of course, is a Semitic person. The Edomites spoke a known Semitic language. So I'm curious to know why you believe that. So please write me a dissertation, and I'll grade it with A, B, or C. No, I'm playing. But yeah, I'm serious. Do explain that. And I can read some more questions.
You know what's funny about this is he says Japheth is Y, D, and A, R. Then he turns around and then says J2 is Esau, where R and J, they both descend from FM89, which will make them all the same. So I don't.
Correct.
Here he is with his follow-up.
All right. Y DNA haplogroup J is non-Isaac, Esau / Jacob, Shem, meaning Ishmael, Asher, Lud, Ishmael, Asher, Amram, Lud, Elam, also the tribe of Dan in Ethiopia. So if you're basically saying J1 is Semitic, I kind of will have to disagree, simply because of the fact that J is, like I said, found among most ancient samples, found among non-Semitic speakers, Sumerians, Hurrians, Eritreans, Korax's culture. Still to this day, it's found highest among Caucasian peoples. So I'll have to kind of disagree with J being Semitic. If we're looking for Semitic people, we ought to look for the Afroasiatic branch. E, haplogroup E, has the best chance of being the ancestors of Semites, considering in fact there are literally scientists that say E is Proto-Semitic. So yeah, I have yet to find any scientific paper that says Caucasus hunter-gatherers are the ancestors of Semites. But I can find papers that say Natufians are the ancestors of Semites. And Natufians had haplogroup E, not J. So I would pull them up, but this presentation, all my slides are only dealing with J, and I don't want to keep flipping back and forth. But yeah, don't worry, I will do a compare and contrast of this presentation again and explain again why E has a better chance than J.
Oh, J2 is Esau, bro.
Ottoman equals Timan. Ashkenaz equals Kenaz. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to. All right. So for everything you're saying, you're going to have to provide sources because, let's be fair, I provided sources for what I believe. You have to provide sources for what you believe. Let's do a fair assessment of this.
You know that ain't how it work on YouTube, man. These guys just get to blurt out any damn thing. And it be, you know, it's valid because they said it, you know. So
yeah. Starting writing all caps as well.
Now he's
Starting to do the typing, yelling type thing.
Why DNA letter markers are just mutations, nation founders. They are not in the order they say they are.
Okay, so now it seems like you're disagreeing with haplogroups. Even though you was just literally a few seconds ago using it to prove your point, now you're disusing it. Okay.
Oh man, this gotta be a troll account. This gotta be a troll. Whoever Flip Cool is, this gotta be a troll. I don't believe this is a genuine question or a person with questions. I'm sorry, I just don't.
Do you think it's UA or a Hebrew Israelite?
No, I don't think it's an Israelite, but I think it's someone trolling.
Probably like an urban apologetics or something.
Maybe it might be.
Yeah.
It just is a funny question of a statement, really. Why DNA letter markers are just mutations?
Well, two can play at that game. Tomato.
Oh man, these guys get on here late. I mean, bottom line is, you can't parse out J and say J is one thing and then R is another, paternal line. Because that's what you're saying. Shem, Ham, and Japheth represents 3 paternal lines. Once you say that J is of one of those paternal lineages, you can't say his brother or his cousin is a different paternal lineage. So that's what the letters are telling you. Okay, these letters, GHIJK, they all come from FM89. They all come from one paternal lineage. We know that. So you have to say that one paternal lineage is Japheth or Shem or Ham. You can't mix up the descendants. Like you all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a troll, bro. This is a troll, bro. This is a troll.
So y'all dumb A. F. Israel is Y DNA, E1B1A, Judah, and 9 tribes. Where are the other? Okay. Oh wait, okay, there they are. Ephraim and Manasseh. E1A is Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay. Do you want to put the link down and talk to him?
Yeah, I mean, I put the link already. I think this is Ronald Dalton's.
No.
I think this is his account. This is his troll account. It gotta be.
Flip cool. Join the chat because I want to know if you actually believe this, or if you're trolling.
So E1B1A is Israel. J2 is Esau. And J1 is Ishmael. How are they going to have separate lineages?
Yeah, I don't know how this works at all. That's like he made it a mutated monster or something.
Yeah. E is positive. DE is positive. So we know they go back to DE. J2 does not even have the yap positive. It's not yap positive, it's yap negative. So how are they related? They have to be directly related if the Bible's true. If Jacob and Esau share the same father, they directly related, and they share the same paternal line, meaning they would have the same haplogroup.
Yep.
So this shows he don't know genetics, and I think he's one of. I think he's been studying on the Mr. Ron, because the next comment is E1B1B is Egypt and Cush.
No. Nope.
So E1B1A is Shem, but E1B1B is Ham.
Yeah, you're basically making us Hamites.
And Esau
I guess would be Canaanites.
This is
the only other option.
Hey, Flip cool, man. Just hit that link. Talk to us for a minute.
By the way, I brought this back up here on the screen, showing that E is among Marsh Arabs and Iraqis. And so when someone was asking about like Assyria and all them, there is E in modern day Mesopotamia. Like you can find it. And I believe the remnant of E that's in the modern area of Iraq would be those Semites that basically got overran by the J marker, Hurrians, Eritreans, Sumerians, and so on and so forth. You specifically find E-M123 and E-M78 at a decent percentage as well.
Right. Look what this brother put, man.
TF, I'm a N-word from Brooklyn, and you Groove F don't understand simple genetics. All right, so can you explain why we don't understand genetics? And can you just click the link? Why type? It's easier to speak than to type.
Yeah, I mean, we don't understand genetics, but you're the person that's making E1B1B not be related to E1B1A.
So tell me, Flip Cool. Who are these Marsh Arabs with 6.3% haplogroup E in your model? Who would they be? I'm curious. Who would be the 6.3% Marsh Arabs with haplogroup E? And who will be the 13.6% of Iraqis with haplogroup E under your assumption? Under your model, should I say?
This guy, I want him to get on here and speak for himself because he just.
Me too. I'm curious. I'm just want to know how, what they sound like, basically.
He got that keyboard warrior syndrome hard.
Mm-hmm. All caps, emojis.
If you say E1B1B is ham, and you say E1B1A is shim, hey, that don't make no sense.
Nope.
Because they both E1B1A and E1B1B come from the same father.
Yep.
They can't be shim and ham. They have to be one or the other.
And who is D? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, who's haplogroup D? Like, come on, man. His brother said, he said, I literally know every nation in Genesis 10 genetic markers. Y'all dumb.
Bro, all right, then come to the panel and prove it. Like, why are you hiding under the screen? Like, don't be scared. I'm nice. Like, I don't cuss. I don't use ad hominem attacks. I try not to. I'll dialogue with you. You just got to come on.
Flip Cool, hit that link, brother. What are you doing? Hit the link. Show the world your prowess. He said, why DNA D are archites?
Archites are Canaanites, by the way. So okay. All right. So E1B1A is Israel. D is Canaan, but D and E are brothers. E1B1B is Egypt and Cush, and D is specifically Archites. So what about the other Canaanite tribes, like let's say Hittites or Amorites or Girgashites? Who are they? Who are the Girgashites? Let's just use Girgashites as one example. Who are the Girgashites? If D is solely Archites.
It's like talking to one of those little, those little magical 8 balls where you had to shake up. It's like talking to one of those.
Waiting for the results. Well, while we wait on him to answer that question, even though he might not, any other questions that we can find? Because he is hogging up the chat and we want to let other people speak. The Girgashites. Okay. Who are the Amorites? So let's find somebody else while he gives me an answer on the Amorites. Q is Hittites. Okay. Amorites. I'm waiting for the Amorites. Sinites are okay. Amorites. Waiting on my answer for the Amorites. Let me look up the other sons of Cain because he had a couple of sons.
So the Sinites and wait a minute, why don't they have the same haplo? He run into the same problem again.
Mm-hmm. He is. But I'm gonna let him keep talking. I wonder how Ngozi would. Well, actually, he probably would just ignore me. All right, so give me the Amorites. And after that, give me Sidon. The Sidon.
So the Archites are haplogroup D. The Girgashites are haplogroup G.
Which is seen in the Caucasus as well.
The Hittites are haplogroup Q.
Seen predominantly among Native Americans.
Haplogroup O is the Sinites.
Seen predominantly among Chinese people of East
Wait,
Asia.
these are all Canaanites. They should all have the same haplogroup, because what does haplogroup mean? A group of people that share a common ancestor. Why are they QG? Oh, like what is the mechanism that you're employing to come to this understanding?
Also, you do know linguistically, all these people are completely different. Like Hittites spoke a Indo-European language. People with haplogroup Q speak. People with haplogroup Q are Native Americans. They speak a Native American language. Haplogroup G people would speak a different branch of Caucasian languages. Haplogroup O people today are Chinese. You know, it's like this just don't make no sense. Y-DNA I1 Amorites, Y-DNA I2 Sidonians. Okay, so what about the Jebusites? Who are the Jebusites? Because you're going to eventually run out of haplogroups. They're going to go all the way down to all the sun.
Hey, so Cheddar Man was an Amorite.
Yeah, it's Cheddar Man and Paleo-Europeans Amorites.
He doesn't know what a haplogroup is.
Blue-eyed Paleo-Europeans. Zimrites are C. Okay.
This is a troll account, man. I'm not buying this. This is not a real person. This is not someone genuine position. This is a troll, man.
Yeah, definitely. Haplogroups are nations, you idiots.
Oh boy.
So, all right. So this is actually why I use language first, then DNA. So, flip cool. How did the Most High divide the nations? Did he divide the nations using haplogroups, or did he divide the nations using language? This is why language is extremely important. This is why I started the entire presentation with language. Language is important because the Most High divided the nations using language. So, did he use language or DNA? Kind of already gave you the answer to that, but I'm hoping you're going to still get the right answer. Because haplogroups are great, but haplogroups are equally great when you connect it with a language. This is predominantly why we know J isn't Semitic, because ancient J spoke Caucasian languages. But anyways, answer that question. Did the Most High divide humanity using haplogroups or language according to the Torah? Yeah, I believe in the Torah. So did he use haplogroups or language according to the Tower of Babel events, which is already in the name itself?
He said both.
Now, technically be incorrect. We used, according to the Torah, language. We, as humans, with our technology, can use haplogroups, but he used language. It just so happened that language overlaps with haplogroups pretty well.
My thing is, like, he's using all of these haplogroups and parsing them out as Amorite, Sidonian. He's going to, like you said, he's going to run out of haplogroups here in a minute, because Y-DNA H is the Hivites. Y-DNA L is the Arvites. It's like he just went through Genesis 10 and then assigned a letter haplogroup to everybody. That's not how science is done. Like, that's not scientific at all. You just, all you're doing is, you remember back in like grade school, they had a list of words on one side, on the left side of the column of the paper, and on the right column they had another list of words, and you would draw a line from each word to the other to match them, which one was similar. That's pretty much what you're doing. You're just matching up these biblical nations with any DNA group that you can find.
Right. For instance, I'll ask you this. Who is Madai's haplogroup? Who is Madai? You know, I'm not going to play this game with him. Can we find any more questions, and then maybe we can go to Clubhouse after this?
Yeah.
This video is already long, and I don't want people to watch it and be like, "Oh, it's so long." But really, it's because we were dealing with a troll. I'd rather.
Yeah, I agree. No, I don't think there's any other questions. We can close it out.
Okay, I'll set the Clubhouse room. I'll make it, and you put the link in the chat, and maybe he'll join it. I will be glad for him to join it. So me and Ray can cuss him out. No, I'm playing. But for Ray and Rue and everybody to hear what we experience.
Madai is Y-DNA-R2 South Asians.
All right, what about Javon? I'm making a room while I ask him those questions, by the way.
Y-DNA-P is the parasite. That's hilarious.
So basically, when it comes to the first letter of the word, he just puts the haplogroup there, from what I can tell, because H is Hivites, P is parasites, G is Gerbishites. So basically, that's all he's doing. By the way, my guy, you're using English translations. They weren't called Hivites in the Hebrew language. So let me just put that out there. Being very English centric.
Oh shit, that's hilarious, man.
All right, start the room. You can join.
All right, hold on. Let me go into the room and see if I can share the link.
Did you change your name on here?
No.
Oh, I can't find you.
There I am there.
Oh, okay. Oh, I did it with a J, not a Y. My bad.
Make the room public.
Yeah.
Javon Y-DNA R1B.
Wait, where did he say that? Javon is R1B. I thought you said, who did he say R was? You're not going to escape from this one. I got you. Who did he say R was earlier? Trying to look.
Let me see.
Wait, you said Madai is R2. Javon is R1B.
He said Japheth was haplogroup R earlier.
Okay, so Japheth, who's the father of all these Japhites, you're saying he is R. Yes or no? Are solely the descendants of Japheth.
How is Japheth R and his children not R? Like, come on, bro. Stop playing.
Exactly. All right, so let me ask you this. Who is Sheba? Who is Sheba's haplogroup? Sheba, son of Joktan.
Well, let me get him this clubhouse because I want him to join the clubhouse. Maybe have.
Me too, but I bet he's too scared. Then he didn't come on here, and there's only two of us. I guess he's afraid of you. He think you're gonna cuss him out.
I'm not gonna cuss him out, but let him say what he gotta say. He said, "I pray y'all confound you for your foolishness."
I pray y'all gives us all knowledge and understanding of when it comes to the Torah, the past, present, and the future. Pray it for us all, so that we teach truth and not lies, because lying is a sin, which I think that you're doing. Flip cool.
Wow, man, this guy is something else, man. All right, let me get the there it is. There's the link. Copy link. All right, Flip Cool. We're going to Clubhouse, and that's the link. So click that link, download the app, and join the room. And you can come in and elucidate these haplogroups with us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And anybody watching, if you want to go, all right, well, Flip Cool, if you don't want to have a conversation, you're on the wrong channel, man. I'm just going to have to, there you go.
How did you find this channel? I'm curious.
Yeah, I got him out of here because he was like, I'm not going to talk to you. Well, what's the point of commenting on the channel then if you don't want to communicate?
Right.
You're very dogmatic, man. He said Yahweh sent him. That was a troll.
Yahweh.
He didn't teach you prophet methodology first before he sent you, man. Come on, stop it. All right, man. Everyone that's here, if you want to have a further dialogue with us, we're going to transition to Clubhouse. I'll probably be on there for 30 minutes, and I'm going to check out for the night so I can wake up in the morning and go to work.
Same.
But if you guys are interested in having a dialogue, click that link right there. Not, we will bid you farewell and see you next time.
Shalom.
Yeah, I can read.
Big business.
RSK, let it play, boy.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. I wake up inside me a prayer, brush my teeth, babe, then I throw on some threads. Wash my face, grab a cup, pour me some yum, put on my backpack, then I'm off to the bread. I eat these devils for breakfast, gotta be careful. Whole lot of blood being shed in the streets. World is so wicked, I weep for the living, I drop a free church for the dead. All my white friends in my pocket, or either they loading onto this black card that I swipe. Say every time that I drop it, the verses be hitting more harder than problems of life. Rich, I collected 2 pennies from every person that willingly gave me advice. Being afraid can't exist in my spirit, I'm fearing no man but the Father in Christ. I put in work with the brothers, we stood on them corners from 10 to like 9 to some night, teaching our people the gospel, equipped with a camera, some posters, some speakers and mic. Every time that I see mama, she telling me, son, you gotta walk in the light. Christ, the bread of heaven, keep feeding my spirit, and I wanna load, not a slide. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, not miniature. Serving same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
When I tell you I'm an Israelite, tribe of Judah, don't you take it personal. Plead the blood on these demons, we purging them. Don't entertain Jezebels, we be curving them. Ayy, I got a ribbon, she virtuous. In person, this blue life ain't virtual. I can't forget when I heard the truth. I got cut with that word, it got surgical. Conviction, Khalid to repentance. I pray these verses encourage you. We repented, now we on the vertical. Judah rising, see Isaiah 32. Big business, nothing minuscule. I picked up that pen back in middle school. Guard your light and take heed who you listen to. Watch your mouth and your ears and your vision too. Hashatan and Shao Kahn, he won't finish you. In Mortal Kombat, this war is not physical. Gird your loins up and follow the general. Messiah is coming, that's scriptural. You gotta starve your flesh. The real war ain't even started yet. This look like a setup for a second exodus. I'm trying to be where the water at. Let's get it.
When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers. When I tell them I'm an Israelite, it's big business, nothing miniature. Service, same thing as minister. Kill the flesh, how to finish them. These commandments, they'll sustain you. I'm surrounded by these angels. I ain't worried, I'm protected from seen and unseen dangers.
Shalom. We will be back tomorrow. James, the Argument King, will be giving a presentation, so you guys don't want to miss that. And then around the same time, our brother Avery will be dropping another part to this series. So y'all stay on the lookout, man. And we on Clubhouse right now. Come through if you want to chat for a little while before we bid our farewell. 7 gang, Source Gang over everything. You know how we rocking, man. Gang.